our head coach of our local football program, Bronco Mandel.
The details themselves with the right preparation can separate you from mediocre competitors that don't do that. And so, yeah, the attention to detail, I think, drives the execution, or should I say brings the execution to life, especially in critical moments.
We welcome you to another edition of Road to the Pit Live. I'm your host, Ed Nunez. My co-host is my son, play-by-play broadcaster and producer with ProView Networks. Son, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Dad. I'm excited. Basketball season is finally starting. At least college basketball tipped off this last Monday. NBA basketball has been going for a little while, and the high school basketball season is right around the corner. Really excited to speak with our guest tonight, Sydney Benally.
Well, we're going to start having a lot more, it's Road to the Pit, but we've also covered soccer and high school football. And football, you've got a playoff football game on Friday to announce for ProView Networks. But without any further ado, our guest is the 2023-24 New Mexico Gatorade Player of the Year for girls basketball, also named the Max Preps Player of the Year in 2024. She was co-district Player of the Year in District 2 5A. She led the Sandia Matadors to the 5A state championship last spring against Volcano Vista. She is an ESPN Women's Top 100 recruit. She recently committed to Princeton University. Sydney, welcome to Road to the Pit Live. Thank you for being on our show.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Yeah, Sydney, that game against Volcano Vista last spring, I think, we'll get into that later. I had your semifinal or quarterfinal against Farmington in the pit with the Anatelu sisters, and man, that was a heck of a game, but they were all, good games, and Coach Lee Kettig did a wonderful job with your team in beating Volcano Vista and Lisa Villarreal, who's one of the greatest coaches in high school history in the state of New Mexico. There's no question about it. Sydney, you announced your decision to commit to Princeton on Sunday, October 27th, 2024. You first spoke with James Yotis of the Albuquerque Journal. Princeton Women's University has an established women's college basketball program. We mentioned before we got on Carla Berube, the head coach there. They won 6 straight regular season Ivy League titles and 5 Ivy League tournament championships. Been about 2 weeks since you've announced your commitment. The dust has settled a little bit. Tell us how you're feeling right now about your commitment to Princeton.
I think overall I'm blessed and happy with my decision. I felt most connected with the girls as well as the coaching staff. So I'm happy with my decision, and now just excited to keep my full focus on now this upcoming basketball season.
And you've got some great teammates there. We'll get into it in a little bit. Really enjoy watching your team play. And one thing about the Sandia girls basketball team, you've played together for quite some time, and you know each other very well. So you've got a state championship to defend. Talk to us about why Princeton University was the right fit for you. You went through a number of different offers, but why Princeton? Now, again, it's an Ivy League school. According to you got I think about a 4.2 GPA around there. So I mean that's outstanding. That's basketball is great. Academics are better. But tell us why Princeton was a good fit.
I think just above all, my family and I value academics, and with choosing the school that I wanted to play for, I took out the basketball aspect and see if I can see myself going there as a student. And that's what I found Princeton to be.
It's Princeton University is located in New Jersey, and it's a long way away, obviously, from New Mexico. What are some of the things that you saw? Coach Berube, I was impressed when I read the preseason preview about Princeton. And what are some of the things you saw out there that could make you feel like this would be your second home? You're going to be there for 4 years. So what was it about there? Because again, New Mexico is one of those places, they call it the land of entrapment. You can't get out of here sometimes. It's something that I've heard a lot of people say, "Oh, I can't wait to get out of here." And then I see them 3 years later. I'm like, "What happened, man?" And so there's something about being here. I mean, if you're a New Mexican, you love it here. So what was it about Princeton that you felt, you could spend 4 years there? It's a long way from home. What was it about there? Coach Berube, the program, the players. What was it about that location there that you felt like Princeton's a good fit for you?
Well, as New Mexican, I do love New Mexico. I love my family here, but Princeton, I love the environment. It being in the East Coast, it's different. Just knowing the distance, I'm able to I'm comfortable with it because of the program and also the people there. They're there for the right reasons, and I feel like I can fit in that I'm a great student and able to fit in with the community as a great athlete.
Definitely different culture, right? West Coast, East Coast, New Mexico. A lot of people call it the land of mañana. I mean, if you're New Mexican, you love New Mexico and you understand the cultural things here in New Mexico. So I think it's going to be a great experience to learn about a different culture. You're going to go back east, 2 hour time change. Everything is different. Yeah, I think back there in New Jersey. But here, I think one of the things that's important when I heard that you had a 4.2 GPA, I'm amazed. That's the most important thing to me. My son went to St. Pius, and I'm glad we sent him there. He's a successful attorney in town, so academics always matter more than anything. But talk about academics. Princeton is an Ivy League school. Why does a school like that attract you? What is it you're hoping to study when basketball is done?
Um, well, as a student, I would like just to thank Sandia for providing the IB program, and which is why I chose to go to Sandia. It stands for International Baccalaureate Program, and it's a program that really just sets you up for college. And as a senior, even though being a part of this program, I have all 7 classes. I'm very appreciative of it, and that is preparing me for college. And at Princeton, they take obviously high students, and so that's why I feel I'll be able to fit in there, and I feel prepared for it.
We also feel like you're going to be a big part of that basketball program, and they have a great program out there. So that's a great answer because, like I said, academics. Anytime you mention Princeton, Harvard, Brown, those kind of schools, there, it's like, yeah, man, I know I never had the grades to even step foot on campus there. Son, go ahead.
Yeah, Sydney, I kind of wanted to ask you about how you think you fit into Princeton's style of play. We mentioned Princeton last year. They won the Ivy League regular season title and the tournament championship for women's basketball. I've got their stats pulled up from the 2023-2024 season. You had an article, or an article was written in On3 Sports, written by Talia Goodman, published on October 27th, 2024. You kind of gave some comments there as to why you thought you fit in. Just their style of play. They play a lot of guards on the floor at the same time. They like to play an up and down pace. You're somebody that prides yourself on the defensive side of the ball. You averaged nearly 4 steals a game last year for Sandia. Talk to us about why Princeton's style of play fits your style of play.
I like Princeton's style of play, yes, for their development of guards, but also their motto is get stops, and that they prioritize defense, and that's what I feel like I pride myself on, so I'm able to fit into that culture.
Talk to us about the tradition, Sydney. We mentioned it. My dad mentioned it. 6 straight regular season Ivy League titles, 5 straight tournament titles, and they've been to the NCAA tournament a few times now. They were ranked in the top 25. Princeton University women's basketball was to end the season last year. I think they came in ranked number 25, yet they got a 9 seed in the NCAA women's tournament last year. But talk to us about how excited you are to play for a program like Princeton that has such a winning tradition.
I'm very excited. I would say that I'm a very big competitor and that I really pride myself on winning, if that's myself or getting my teammates involved, diving on the floor for extra plays. So I'm excited to join that atmosphere.
And Sydney, I wanted to ask you about your recruitment process. You narrowed it down to 4 before you announced your decision. I think it was Princeton, BYU, UNLV, and Northwestern. You had a bunch of Division I offers. I mean, I don't know how many you had total. It's probably over 20, 25. We mentioned you're an ESPN top 100 recruit. I mean, that is such a prestigious award. But how was it that you were able to narrow it down to those 4 schools?
Out of all those 4 schools, I was able to take visits to them and meet their coaching staff. I was able to picture myself on that campus. And so, just with a lot of discussion and prayers and with my family, I was able to obviously narrow it down to Princeton. But I was thankful for getting to know those other programs, and that they were able to invite me and just see how I'd feel in their culture.
How did you get in touch with Princeton, Sydney? I think I was looking on your Twitter page, and Princeton kind of came in this summer, if I'm not mistaken. If it was sometime in June or July of this summer, I'm sure when you were out playing some club basketball with your club team, Mo Jeff, they may have seen you playing at a tournament. So talk to us about how they became involved in your recruitment process.
Yeah, so they first saw me, I believe, in Louisville, playing with my AAU team, Jeff, and they reached out when I was actually in Phoenix, Arizona, playing in Nabi, which is a Native American invitational basketball tournament. And so I was able to just gain that relationship and connection with the coaching staff. And then while they invited me to on an official visit, so I was able to see the campus. And even though they may have, I would say, joined my recruiting process on the later side, I was able to connect with them so quickly, and that I'm able to trust them for my next 4 years.
Dad, I'll turn it back to you.
Sydney, I think that's important when you mention trust. Because you're not going to be here. You're not going to be in New Mexico, and that's something that your family has to know, that you're going to be fine. You're going to be okay. And there's a point too that you got to grow up, right? You got to
Mhm.
grow up. You're going to graduate from high school, but still, your family's going to want to know you're safe, and trust is a big thing. I've talked to Coach Kettig today, and him and I had him on my show last year, and have all the respect in the world for Coach Kettig. And I asked him, "What do you have to say about Sydney?" And this is what he said to me. He said, "Sydney is an extremely talented student athlete. Her accomplishments on the floor have put her in a position to become one of the most decorated high school girls basketball players in state history. Her accomplishments in the classroom have earned a spot amongst the most gifted students in the country at Princeton University. We could not be more proud of her. She amazes me daily." So I think that's pretty high praise from Coach Kettig, man. There's some highlights from last year at the pit against Volcano Vista, and I've really got to give Coach Kettig a lot of credit, and the team. The players are the ones that have to make the plays and do the job. But when you're going into a championship against Volcano Vista, with Lisa Villarreal and her reputation, Coach Kettig really had to work and win that along with your team, and you had an amazing performance that night. We're going to recap that. You won the state championship last spring against Volcano Vista. Defeated Alamogordo 83-44 in the opening round. Defeated El Dorado 64-40 in the quarterfinal. They had that game as you against Bella Hines, who's with ABC Prep playing. She decided to play for ABC Prep her senior season, and you guys beat them. And all due respect, to Sandia, you had the better team. There's no question. The El Dorados had some good players, but Sandia, the better overall team. I had that quarterfinal or semifinal against Farmington. As I mentioned, you went against the Anatelu sisters and Coach Adair, who's one heck of a good coach. That game came down to the last seconds. It really did. There were some plays either way. You made the plays. You won the game. Talk to us a little bit about that semifinal game against Farmington.
Yeah, so against Farmington, very intense. I would say there's like a rivalry in that in our district. We went 1-1 in district play, but we're able to pull off a win in the district tournament. Uh, so we were able to win it at our home gym. So I think I'm related to the Anatolu sisters, so there's like that rivalry. Um, And I think just playing them in state again, we were very familiar with each other, and so knowing how much we've played against each other, um, it was just it was fun, but also very intense. And then just being named Gatorade Player of the Year before the game, I didn't want to use that as a distraction. So I had to settle myself down and able to, and especially for a morning game, had to gather my team and even myself and just pull out a win at the end of the day.
I think Capolani's at New Mexico Highlands.
Yes.
Okay, so she's a heck of a player. So were her sisters as well. And so was there any talk after the game about, was there any bragging rights, or are you guys pretty close? And it's tough when you play against a rival, and especially relatives. That's got to be tough. That is a little bit of a rivalry. And my son and I had Coach Adair on last spring. We think the world of him. He's a heck of a good coach. But was there any hey, we got the bragging rights? Was there any chitter chatter after the game?
I think during the game there's a little chitter chatter, but it's all love. And after the game, we were able to hug each other, just knowing that we again played with each other that summer in the Nabi tournament, and we were able to get a championship together. So it's just all love at the end of the day.
Oh man, and you spilled it all, man, right? Spilled it all. There's no doubt about it. Because in the pit, I got to ask you this, because the pit is a place where everyone wants to play. I mean, the building's old. It's an old place. It was built in '66, so it's old. But that place has some magic. It really does. Talk to us a little bit about what it meant to to play in the pit and win a championship there, because everything's different. Shooting background's different. You see your friends way up there, and it's the music blaring. It's a whole different atmosphere. Talk a little bit about playing in the pit.
Yes, it's a great atmosphere. That was just my motivation this season, or last season, was to play in the pit. Just knowing we were able to play only one game my sophomore season, so I wanted to play more games in the pit. Just knowing that depth perception, you got to get used to it. For the big lights and just the people that come to support, it can really pack the gym. And so I was excited for it. And just the music they play in the pit, me and my team were able to prepare for it, and that we were playing that same music at our practices before like the semifinals and the state championship game to get ready for it.
It's and we're going to talk about your championship game. I got to stay on the outline. My son will get mad. He gets mad if I taper. I go off into these little stories, man. So, but it's funny because you can play that music, but the horn is so loud. And everything is such a different atmosphere there. But okay, so Sandia did defeat Volcano Vista by 4. You scored 35.7 rebounds, 2 steals in the state championship game. You averaged 30 points per game in the state tournament. Tell us a little bit about that game against Volcano Vista. TT Hill, I mean, man, that girl, when she gets a rebound, forget it. You're not getting it away from her. I thought Coach Villarreal, her guards might not have been as talented as they were in the past, but she still found a way to get to the championship game. Talk a little bit about the championship game.
Yeah, again, with Volcano, we beat them early in the season, and then they beat us in the Metro tournament. So we were a bit familiar with them. I think coming into game, we knew that I would say that Sandia is composed of big guards, but Volcano, they did have TT, in which posts, in which was their advantage. And so we had to prepare in our defense, and everyone had to work together to gain rebounds, and not just our posts. And so, and also we were going up against a zone, in which something we have been working on, and we were also prepared for that. And knowing Volcano's the experienced team, they've played in the pit many times, so they had that one thing over us. But I feel like we came in, put up a good fight in the first half, but then we were able to stretch it out in the second half, and at the end of the day, it came down to free throws.
Make your free throws, right? The man, especially, again, those are so important. They call them free for a reason, but with that kind of background and that kind of pressure, Sandia came through. Son, go ahead.
Sydney, I wanted to ask you about the experience you have playing with your sister, Kaya Benally, who was an eighth grader last year for Sandia, averaged, 7 points per game, couple assists, couple steals. What is that experience like to get to play with your sister?
I love playing with my sister. She's my training partner, and she started as my rebounder, but now we rebound for each other. Just playing with my sister, she plays the same position as me as a point guard. And so when she's on the floor, I'm able to run off guard, in which I'm able to gain more shots and just learn how to move off ball. So I'm very appreciative that she's able to play with me, and just the high caliber player that she is. She is a great addition to our Sandia team. And I just, with her addition, we were able to win a state championship.
Talk to us about how her game has grown in the offseason. I mean, I think there's some natural growth there from being an eighth grader to a freshman. Your body just naturally grows. You get a little taller, you get a little stronger. What things do you expect from your sister this season?
I think overall she's just grown as a player and become more mature, and that she's always had that defensive intensity, but now she's able to control like that fouls, in which she's I'd say she's smarter now. And also high school is just different from AAU in that now she's able to score offensively, and she's more confident in herself as a player.
What's it going to mean to you, Sydney? You know, this may be the last time you and your sisters share the floor on a competitive level. You know, you guys might be on the same team. You never know down the road. Maybe she gets recruited to Princeton, or you guys play on the same team in another league down the road. But what's that going to mean to you?
I think I'm just overall blessed to have the opportunity to play with my sister, and that we have a special bond with each other, and knowing that this may be like our last season playing with each other, I'm very grateful, and we've grown together as sisters. And so just wish nothing but the best for her in her recruiting process as well.
I think our producer, Eric Moulton, has a question in the live chat. And it's from Miguel Sanchez, one of our loyal listeners. It reads, any insight on where Kaya would like to play college ball? I'm sure she's getting offers already. Tracking her Twitter page, I think she already has a Division I offer from the University of New Mexico. But Sydney, perhaps you could speak a little bit more to that.
Well, as she's a very shifty point guard and she values defense, so obviously a program that values defense and that will be able to let her control the floor. She loves winning, so a winning program. But I'm not my sister, so I'm really not sure where she's gonna go. That's all the insight I can really share.
Fair enough. Fair enough. I wanted to ask you a little bit about one of the things you mentioned earlier, Sydney, and that was NABI, the Native American Basketball Invitational. You played on the Res Bombers this year, and you guys won the championship, played in late July in Phoenix, Arizona. It was played, I think, at the Footprint Center where the Phoenix Suns and the Phoenix Mercury play. You were named the tournament MVP on the girls' side. You scored 21 points in the championship. The Res Bombers defeated the champions from last year from Oklahoma. Talk to us about what that experience was like. I read an article about that, and it seems like it's awesome to bring a bunch of communities from around the world. I think I read that there was, Native American communities from the United States, from New Zealand. Talk to us about what that experience is like.
It was a overall great experience meeting new people, forming new relationships. I think just learning and seeing the culture of different Native American groups around the country was very cool. And just the opportunity to play on a big stage, it was very fun, and that they treated the players very well. Um, I think I'm excited just to be a part of that. And the amount of media coverage I was actually surprised with, but very grateful for, in that a lot of eyes were like on us. And it was just overall an exciting opportunity.
I think you mentioned maybe the Anatelu sisters were on that team. Is there anyone else from New Mexico that us New Mexico high school basketball fans may know that played on the Res Bombers that won NABI this year on the girls' side?
Yes, it was the Anatulu sisters, and also as Mila Espinoza and Lily Duncan from Volcano, and then Anaya Johnson from Navajo Prep.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, that sounds like a really cool experience. Congratulations on being named tournament MVP and winning the championship. Wanted to ask you a little bit about your club season. That starts pretty much right away after the New Mexico High School basketball tournament. I think you played on a new club team this year, Team Mo Jeff. Talk to us about how that club season went for you.
Um, as my last club season, I'm very grateful for how it went. Even though there was ups and downs, I was able to learn a lot as a player and as forming new relationships. I was able to travel across the country and to new places I've never been before, and play against very high caliber um, athletes. And so that was great. And I think it did start right after the state tournament, so it was something I had to get used to. With high school basketball, I feel like um, I'm more focused on like the scoring aspect, but like with club, I have to focus on all aspects of basketball and move without the ball and overall communicate at a high level. So it was a very fast switch.
Yeah, that was going to be my next question. Just talk to us a little bit. I mean, I think, the level of competition is obviously different. That's no knock on New Mexico high school basketball. It's just different. But what are some of the biggest differences you see on the defensive side of the ball? How are you challenged in the club season versus kind of what you see on the high school basketball season floor?
Club season, every game, it's going to be tough competition, in that you have to go full out on defensive scouting and offensive running plays. And I think overall, you really can pick and choose, uh, like for high school, pick and choose, like I would say, like plays, or whether you want to not necessarily take off, but to conserve your energy. But you can't do that at in AAU ball, in that it'll easily end up in an easy 2 points, because I'm constantly going against other top 100 recruits.
Yeah. And since you mentioned that, this will be my last question, and then I'll turn it back to my dad. Being named to the ESPN Women's Top 100 recruiting list is a huge honor. ESPN recently expanded their list. I think they went from maybe it was 50 to 100. But what does that mean to you, Sydney?
I think I'm very blessed and happy to know that I'm acknowledged. Knowing from New Mexico, not many New Mexico as well as a Native American athlete have this honor, and so at the end of the day, I'm very blessed and hope to be an example for other student athletes to achieve the same goal.
Dad, I'll turn it to you.
Sydney, you decided on Princeton, but Lobo fans listening are going to want to know: did Mike Bradbury, and UNM come up with an offer, to for you to go to UNM?
Yes, UNM did offer me, I believe, my sophomore year, and I was able to explore the campus. And they hosted me on an official visit. I was able to watch them practice, and I was overall thankful for the experience.
Yeah, you just made a choice. The other thing I want to ask you is, Coach Jay Hill trains Bella Hines. I know Coach Hill real well, and he does a good job with Bella. And you're trained, I believe, by Jamal Fenton.
Yes.
Tell us, the former Lobo Jamal Fenton, and he played. That guy was a good player, man. Change of pace guard, quick. Defense, good defender. How is he? What's he done to develop your game? What's he worked on with you the most?
I think sharing his knowledge as a former point guard, playing at the next level, knowing that he was undersized, he was able to find out the details, and in which he was able to share that with me. I've been a part of his program for about like 3 to 4 years, and so obviously it's proven to work. He's shown me how to shoot accurately and create moves for me. He's developed my footwork and just overall developed me as a point guard.
Yeah, you know what? Coach Fenton has been training players in Albuquerque, for a while now. And it seems like, he played with Coach Alford here. And I know my son and I remember him really well. Good guy, and he's working on developing your game for this level and then to go to the next level. You're going to defend your state championship. We mentioned that game against Hobbs. The pieces, Chloe Brown, Coach Danny Brown's daughter, Audie Wright. I thought Audie Wright played a heck of a game against Farmington last year. If not for her, you may have lost that game. She played very well. Hope Giddings has got several offers, a smart point guard, knows what to do with the ball, hits her free throws, hits the threes. Juice Randall, transfer. I talked to Chuck Giddings this morning, very good friend of mine. He mentioned the impact you've had on other players because of your work ethic. He mentioned that. Your sister Kaya Benally. You've got Coach Lee Keddick. He's a defending champ, man. You're the defending champions. You're going to have a mark on your back. You got Hobbs the first game. Coach Carpenter is a very, very good friend. Yeah, I'm going to send him. I'm going to tell him you said you're going to hit 35 on him. We don't, as we need it. If we need any more hype for that game, I love Joe, man. Joe's a good guy and runs a great program. But first things first. Talk about what it means for you to be defending. And a game against Hobbs, we'll talk about that second. But defending the state championship, what does that mean for you? Your senior year, this is it for you.
Yeah, senior year. Feel like I have accomplished everything my junior year, so I don't want to settle for anything less. Very excited for this upcoming season. Me and my sister and my teammates, we've been training hard, off hours where no one sees, and so we want to be able to hold that state championship trophy again.
Going to be exciting. Talk a little bit about that Sandia. I don't know if you're going to have a ceremony, a ring ceremony before the first game. I don't know what you're going to do, but it's there. Everyone knows, and everyone knows that's going to be a great game. Talk a little bit about it. And there's more. That's not going to make or break the season, but it's an exciting first game. There's no doubt about it. Coach Carpenter runs a great program. I don't know how many championships he has. He has a few. But talk a little bit about the excitement. I'm getting excited. I hope I get to broadcast it. Talk a little bit. I'm sure my son wants that game too. Talk a little bit about the excitement for that first game.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be exciting. It's going to be one of the only games that's going to be going on in the state. So hopefully a lot of people show out. But just much respect to the Hobbs program and Coach Carpenter. A very well-run program. I think going out, we can't overlook anyone, knowing we have that target on our back. And so we just need to trust the work we've put into our craft and just go out as a team and just do our best.
You got to be a little excited, man. You have to be. I remember when I played and I'd see certain games and you just like, okay, we'll be ready, and I bet you just can't wait. You got to be a little anxious for that. Coach Nunez, you got any more questions for Sydney?
Kind of a silly question, Sydney, but there's so many good three-point shooters on your team. Yourself, your sister, Hope Giddings, Audrey Wright. Three-point contests in practice, who wins those usually?
I'm going to have to say myself.
No, bet on yourself every time. No, bet on yourself every time. I like that. But, I can imagine that they're close, right, because you guys shot a really high percentage from three last year. So that's really, I just had a silly question for you, Sydney. I want to thank you again for coming on, and I want to wish you the best of luck your senior season.
Yeah, well, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Sydney Benally, Sandia guard, committed to Princeton just a couple weeks ago. Again, as my son said, we wish you the best of luck this season. Thank you so much for being on Road to the Pit.
Yes, thank you.
You bet. We'll be back on Road to the Pit after these messages. We'll have a football breakdown after these commercial messages.
Ladies and gentlemen, from La Casa de los Lobos, the Pit, here at the University of New Mexico, let's get ready to rumble!
Let him cook now. Let him cook. I said let him cook.
Welcome back to Road to the Pit Live. I'm your host, Ed Nunez. Our co-host is my son, Nick Nunez, a play-by-play announcer for ProView Networks, also a producer. And I forgot to say this the first time. If you like our channel, hit the subscribe. You can also follow us on Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube. So please follow our channel. We've done a lot of fun things here. You know, son, we're going to go to the football brackets here. Also follow us on social media on X. We're going to go to the football brackets here in just a sec. For the football playoffs. But Sydney Benally, man, I really enjoyed her. I really did. You know, great work ethic. But, you know, son, I think for me, you know, I used to tell you that when you went to Pius, you're not here to play no basketball, man. You're here to get the grades. You did. She's at a 4.2 GPA going to Princeton. So what was your impressions of Sydney Benally?
Just well-spoken, very mature, just seems like a good human being, a good person. She's a tremendous basketball player. I mean, I think that kind of speaks for itself. She's so humble, too. You know, I mean, if you look at her Twitter account, I think there's a picture there which shows how many offers she had. She was recruited by nearly every single Ivy League school, Harvard, Penn, Cornell. Those schools are so difficult to get into because of the academic standards. And I mean, she has it. You can tell she's a very intelligent speaker. And I'm just excited for her senior season. She talked about the relationship she has with her sister, Kaya Benally. How cool is that, man? Her sister was an 8th grader last year and, you know, was a significant contributor to that state championship team. She's a year older now. Zandia has almost everybody coming back. I mean, you would have to pencil them in as the favorite, but girls 5A basketball, man, that's deep. And we talked about it. Farmington's always good. They've got a couple. I think they've got maybe 2 Anna Taylor sisters coming back. Capiolani graduated last year, but they're going to be tough. So no, I'm just excited. Excited for the high school basketball season to start, and really grateful to Sydney for giving us her time tonight.
Yeah, Hobbs is their first game of the year. That's going to be a lot of fun. There's a comment from Miguel Sanchez. We'll definitely be rooting for Sydney at Princeton. Had a lot of fun res balling in Anseth and Red Mesa many years ago. Some great hoopers on the Reds, and there's no question about that, right? There's no doubt about that. A little Netflix thing. I don't know if you saw it about res ball. I haven't seen it, but yeah, I definitely would like to. You know, Nick, there's the football playoffs start this week, and I think the number 1 seed. We'll get the brackets here. And in 6A was La Cueva, and in 5A it's Roswell, and 4A I can't remember who it was in 4A. Bloomfield. Artesia's right behind them.
No, Artesia's 5A. Artesia's 2 and 5A.
And then 3A was St. Mike's, and 2A I believe it was Dexter. So some great, you know, football playoffs are right around the corner. Let's take a look. That's the first round in 2A, and there's the number 1 seed. The Texaco Wolverines. Santa Rosa beat Legacy Academy 27-20 last game of the year. And your real quick thoughts there. Texaco Wolverines have been playing pretty well all season long. What's your thoughts on this bracket here? Looks like Legacy and Santa Rosa might meet. They've got Loving and Cuba for a first round game, and then Raton versus Jal, and then in the upper brackets, Navajo Prep versus McCurdy. And Eunice, who's always dangerous against Laguna Acoma. Your quick thoughts about that bracket there, 2A.
Yeah, if I'm not mistaken, it was Eunice and Texaco in the state championship for 2A last year. They played earlier in the season for a lot of the year, had been the top two teams in Class 2A. But Texaco always runs a good football program. I think they were in the state championship 2 years ago as well, and they lost to Jow. But Legacy Academy is somebody that we've talked about on this show a ton, making the move up from 8-man football to 11-man in the 2A classification. Had been perfect all season long. They had beaten Hope Christian. Hope Christian is the 8th seed in Class 3A. So Legacy Academy having a real strong year, got their first test at the end of the season. I think that's a good thing, right, Dad? I mean, you want to be tested going into the playoffs. You want to face some adversity. You don't want to face that for the first time in the playoffs. So I think their coaching staff will have a bounce back. They still got a home game. They're the 3 seed. Obviously, it's going to be tough to dethrone, those Southeast teams in Texaco. Eunice is a 5 seed this year. I like Texaco on the top half of the bracket. I can't say I know too much about Loving, Cuba, Raton, and Jow. But, if I was a betting man, I would say we'll see Legacy Academy and Santa Rosa in the semifinals on the bottom side of the bracket. I think Legacy Academy probably learned a lot from that final game of the season. They're a metro area team. Santa Rosa has a strong tradition of football. But I'm going to take Legacy Academy and Texaco in the championship. I'll call it a coin toss flip. And I'm going to say Legacy Academy Silverbacks will be the champions in Class 2A.
That'll Santa Rosa beating Legacy Academy last week 27-20, and I had as you know, Coach Brian Clampett on the sports desk with me about a couple weeks ago. So they've done a great job moving from 8-man to 11-man. Let's take a look at the 3A bracket if we can. Our producer Eric Moulton doing a great job, and there's 3A football there. And the number one, the Horsemen have played well. St. Mike's the number 1 seed, and they've played well all season long. You've also got Socorro and Robertson, Las Vegas Robertson, and Dexter is the number 2 seed. Dexter's played very well as well. And first round matchups there: Hope Christian versus Theroux, New Mexico Military versus Hot Springs, West Las Vegas versus Ruidoso, Hatch Valley versus Powahki Valley. I got to say this: Joey Fernandez at St. Mike's does it. I think they won it last year. I think they won it. Didn't they win it last year? I thought they did. I thought they did.
Yeah, they beat Robertson in the state championship last year.
You know what? I don't know the name was good. Leroy Gallegos does a great job at Robertson. You might have an interesting matchup there with West Las Vegas and Robertson in the second round, and Hatch Valley and or Powahki Valley. I don't know much about them versus Dexter, but Dexter has been playing some good football. But I've got to say, for me, the class there is St. Mike's is undefeated, I believe. I'm going to go with them as champs.
They are, yeah. I think the closest game they had all year was the last game of the season. They played Robertson. If I'm not mistaken, the final score was 34-21, and they've just kind of been blowing everybody out. They beat Hope Christian pretty handily this year. I think they put up either 60 or 70 points. So that's who they could get in the quarterfinal matchup if Hope Christian does knock off Theroux. Let's give some credit to Ruidoso. They're playing in Class 3A this year. All the fires that were going down in Ruidoso over the summer kind of really messed with their preseason practice, if you will. And for them to get into the state tournament as an 11 seed, they'll have a tough matchup with West Las Vegas there. West Las Vegas and Robertson did play earlier this season. They are in the same district. I watched some highlights from the Santa Fe New Mexican on Twitter for that game, and it was close. I think West Las Vegas was up in the fourth quarter. And it's always tough, man, when you play rivalry games, as you know, Dad. I mean, West Las Vegas and Robertson, that's a rivalry in anything you're playing. Basketball, soccer, cross country, whatever it is, those are crosstown rivals. So I think that's an intriguing quarterfinal matchup. As you mentioned, Dexter's been playing pretty well. Socorro's got a strong tradition of football. They've been in the state championship, I think, 1 or 2 times in the last couple of years, or have made deep playoff runs. But I agree with you. I think St. Mike's is the perennial favorite. I think we may have a rematch of I think it might be the last 2 years. I can't remember because Robertson won the state championship 2 years ago. I can't remember if they beat St. Mike's or not, but I'm predicting a Robertson-St. Mike's state championship. And I think St. Mike's will go back to back.
Ooh, that'd be a good one. That really would be. If we can go to 4A, Eric. 4A football in the Bloomfield. I covered them a couple years ago, son, when they beat Silver 2 years ago. They won the state championship, lost last year. They're the number 1 seed. Bernalillo at the 4. Taos, a surprising number 3. And Pius is really coming on. That's your alma mater there. And Curtis Flakes has got them in good position. Coach Kovacs at Bloomfield has done a good job with that program. Coach Kobos at Bernalillo. They got a new coach at Taos. He just came in the middle of the summer. I can't remember what his name was. He's got them as the number 3. You got to give them a lot of credit. But, son, talk a little bit about your alma mater, St. Pius, man. They've got some playmakers, and they've really turned it on in the second half of the season.
Oh, they really have. They're young team. Their quarterback, Isaiah Carpenter, is a sophomore. Their star running back, Herschel Alloway Jr., sophomore. Their number 1 receiver, Cale Cox-Liggins, a sophomore. So they're young, and they really kind of hit their stride. I think about the midway point of their season. The victory that I was most impressed with from St. Pius this year probably was when they traveled down to Portales and beat Portales in Greyhound Stadium. Portales being the 4A runner-up from last year. St. Pius is a team that can put points up on the board, but they've been better defensively as well. I think they beat Valencia, I think one of the last couple games of the season. It was fairly low scoring. It wasn't the last game of the season. It might have been the second to last game of the season. And I think they held Valencia either to 10 points or to single digits. And so defensively, they're really starting to catch their stride. They've got playmakers on the offensive side of the ball. I think Coach Curtis Flakes and the coaching staff at St. Pius has really just found a groove and found a way to use all of those offensive weapons that he has. I think they're dangerous. I think we got to give credit to the district that Bloomfield, Bernalillo, Espanola Valley, and Taos are in. All of those teams are in the same district, and you see it right there. 3 of the 4 top seeds, Bloomfield, Bernalillo, and Taos, all come from that district. So certainly the most competitive district in Class 4A. Bloomfield is the cream of the crop. They're undefeated, I believe, coming into the state tournament. They beat everybody in that district, Bernalillo, Taos, and Espanola Valley. Some other teams in this bracket that I could see making some noise. Valencia, you just had Ladarius Cage on the sports desk. I think, was it yesterday?
Yes, it was.
Yeah, they beat Albuquerque Academy the last game of the year. They got a strong defense. It's going to take a lot to beat. Well, they got to get through Moriarty first. If they are able to get out of the first round, it's going to take a lot to beat Bloomfield. But defense does travel. If they can make a couple plays on offense, maybe they make that game interesting. Espanola Valley is a team that started. Look at that first round matchup. The 6-11 with Espanola Valley and Manzano. Both of those teams started the season hot. Espanola Valley, I think, was 5-0 to start the season. Manzano lost their week 1 game, and then I think had won 5 in a row, and then kind of cooled off towards the end of the year. They squeeze in at an 11. So that's an intriguing first-round matchup, I think, with a lot of offense. Manzano's quarterback, I think, threw 6 touchdown passes in one game this year, so he can kind of spread the ball around. Grants is a team that's been kind of up and down. They're competitive. Silver is a team that's traditionally been a powerhouse in football. As far as who I like Bloomfield on the top side of the bracket. I love St. Pius in the bottom side of the bracket. I'm going to call Bloomfield and St. Pius in the state championship. And once a starting, always a starting. I'm going to go with St. Pius as your Class 4A state champs.
And I don't blame you. I know I don't want to forget about Bernalillo and Coach John Kobos. They played Bloomfield earlier this season with Bloomfield coming away with a close win. Now, the only question I have, we'll move on, is Pius. Are they ready for that Espanola Valley versus Manzano? Is Isaiah Archuleta is one of our listeners in Friday in Espanola Valley. And I think, that's a good thing about what you said about Manzano started out hot early. I had Coach Stephen Johnson on the sports desk, and they were 5-1. All of a sudden, they lost 4 in a row. So can they right the ship? Can they right it? And, again, Coach Kobos at Bernalillo, their defense, man. But, your pick, I'm going to stay with Bloomfield. I would love to see Bloomfield. I'd love to see Pius coming out of that bracket. Is Pius ready with all those sophomores? Are they ready? I don't know. Curtis Flakes does a great job out there, man. He really does. So we'll see. If we could take a look at the next bracket, Eric. 5A football, Coach Lynn, I had Ladarius Cage on yesterday, and he actually mentored under Coach Lynn. I had him on the sports desk last year, And I texted him a couple weeks ago just to make sure everything was out. Hey, coach, everybody all right with the floods? Good guy. Gosh, coaching the Lone Star Conference. Much respect for him, man. Artesia, Jeremy Maupin. How many titles has Artesia won? He's won a title there. He won a title when he played there. Guy's a mad scientist, always making plays up. Love the guy. Deming and Gadsden are your top seeds. That's you know what? That's going to be a tough bracket there. This first round matchups: Miyamura versus the ground and pound hot and Hornets with the Miri Mumba. We had him on Road to the Pit. Los Alamos versus Valley, Mayfield versus Berlin, and Lovington versus Goddard. What stands out for you, Coach?
Well, the Lovington Wildcats is a team that we really hyped up at the beginning of the season. They started the season 5-0. They beat the 1 seed Roswell 35-21 at home at Wildcat Stadium. And then Lovington kind of cooled off when they played Artesia. It's kind of a rude awakening for the Wildcats. I saw some comments on social media from some Artesia fans saying, "Welcome to 5A football, Lovington." Artesia, as you mentioned, a traditional powerhouse, more state championships than any program in New Mexico. Right behind them is Lovington. That is the district that stands out in Class 5A. If you look at it, District 2 5A gets, let's see here, we've got Roswell at the top, Artesia number 2, Deming number 3, Gadsden number 4, Mayfield number 5, Lovington number 6. Goddard number 7. So 6 out of the 7 teams in District 2 5A get into the state tournament. I think Highland could that's a matchup that Highland wants back. I think you mentioned it. Highland and Miamira did play earlier in the season.
Did. Very close.
In Albuquerque, and it was a back and forth game, man. I think you mentioned that was the first game that Amiri Mumba was really healthy. He was a little banged up this season. And then coming back, I think he had a couple long touchdown runs. So I'm going to take Highland in that opening first round, the 8-9 matchup with Miamara. They're going to get Roswell. Roswell beat Artesia at Bulldog Bowl this year. And I thought I saw something on Twitter that Roswell had not beaten Artesia at Bulldog Bowl during the regular season. And I don't know how many years. I think it went back to maybe the 1940s or the 1950s. So
beat him good too. Beat him pretty good.
And for Roswell to accomplish that after losing to Artesia in Bulldog Bowl in the state championship last year, well, you got to think Artesia's hungry. So on the top side of the bracket, I like Roswell. Like you mentioned, Jeff Lynn does a great job. On the bottom side of the bracket, man, there's a lot of intriguing matchups there. I think Mayfield might have a chance to upset Deming in the quarterfinals if they're able to beat Berlin in the first round. So I'll go Artesia and Mayfield in the semifinals. I think we're going to have a rematch of Roswell and Artesia in the state championship. And I'm taking Roswell. I'm taking the Coyotes to be your 5A state champion.
We got a question, I think, from John Romero about who's going to be did we give a pick for 3A football? Did you give a pick?
I think we did. I think we were going to say it was.
Here it is.
Yeah, I think we said it was going to be St. Mike's and Robertson. We talked about it. They played the last game of the season. I think it was 34-21 St. Mike's. And, they're just so deep, man. They came up to Albuquerque and played Albuquerque Academy this year. I tuned into a little bit of that game. They're just so well balanced. They're really good on defense. I just think it's going to be tough for anybody in 3A other than Robertson to beat them.
Well, John Romero's waiting to say, he's the St. Mike's guy, man. So he's waiting, if we go against the Horsemen, he's going to let us have it. But I think we both have St. Mike's. Let's go to our last bracket, and then we'll break for our show coming up, our 6A bracket, and the number 1 seed, La Cueva. Volcano Vista's number 4, Cleveland number 3, Centennial number 2. And I think we said this. Okay, La Cueva unbeaten. When they beat Pinnacle, I thought that brought them up to another level. I saw Sebastian Noel on the breakdown show Sunday for ProView, and he mentioned Cam Dyer, Cheeto Lambero, the running back, and then Mason Poza. They might have 3 of the best players in the state, and then they got a lineman that signed with Wisconsin. That's a tough team right there. But Centennial has been playing beat Las Cruces. Cleveland has started out slow, but under Robert Garza, they've really come on. Those are the top 3 teams to me. I know Volcano Vista and Chad Wallen, good friend of mine. I thought you had the El Dorado Hobbs game first round. Las Cruces, West Mesa, Los Lunas, Piedra Vista, Rio Rancho, Sandia. I don't know if they changed you to that game. talk about what you see in this bracket.
Yeah, starting with the first round matchups, the 8-9 El Dorado and Hobbs. I like El Dorado, man. 7-3 on the season. I believe they finished third in District 2-6A behind La Cueva and Los Lunas. This El Dorado team has a really good defense, man. I talked to one of their assistant coaches, Elias Franco, who does some play-by-play for Pro V Networks. And he was telling me, we're just really excited about our defense. They're experienced. They're disruptive. They were, you know what? I got to give them credit against La Cueva. I know the score was a little lopsided. It was 56-7. But if you watch that first quarter, El Dorado punched back early on. And then once La Cueva got going downhill, the game was over. But Hobbs is a team that's pretty tough. You know, I did start prepping for that game last night. I did get switched over to Rio Rancho Sandia. But Hobbs has a quarterback. He's a senior. His name's Brock Beatty. I think he's thrown for almost 2,000 yards and has close to 20 passing touchdowns. That's a team that can put up some offense. I want to say they beat Artesia earlier this year. Hobbs did. So that's a team that has some offensive firepower, and I'm really excited to see that matchup. Hobbs' high-powered offense versus El Dorado's defense. Something's got to give there. It's probably going to be cold in Albuquerque on Friday. The game will be played at 7 p.m. at Wilson Stadium if you want to go check that game out. So I'm looking forward to that one. I think defense travels. It's going to be cold, so I'm going to take El Dorado. Las Cruces, West Mesa. We love Landry Brody, man. You've had him on the show. I've talked to him before. I had West Mesa a couple times this year. Really glad that they got into the playoffs. I think they won their final game of the regular season, and they needed to win it. West Mesa has been kind of a question mark at the quarterback position. They've had some guys that have come in and done some really good things. They've got a strong running game. Their running back, Logan Jacobson, Jamari Phillips-Woods is another strong tailback for them. They've got some good playmakers at receiver, Ronnie Galletti. Marcos Ochoa, he returned a kick back against Los Lunas earlier this year for 94 yards. So they got some playmakers on the offensive side of the ball. They got a really good passing defense. Their two cornerbacks, Trayvon Sargent and Sejan Thompson, man, those guys I think could play at the next level. Las Cruces is tough. You know, they had to battle it out with Centennial. I think it's going to be tough for West Mesa to win, but if they can get some stops on the defensive side of the ball and control the clock, we'll see. Los Lunas, Pedro Vista, a lot of question marks as to how Pedro Vista kind of snuck in to the state tournament. That being said, they deserve it. They did beat Sandia earlier in the season, and that game against Los Lunas is going to be tough in the village of Los Lunas. We had Los Lunas earlier this year, as we mentioned, against West Mesa. Their quarterback, Caden Reese, true dual threat quarterback. He's a lefty. He will make you pay on that RPO, that run pass option. So I like Los Lunas in that first round matchup. Rio Rancho Sandia. This is a rematch of the quarterfinals last year. Rio Rancho has kind of toggled back and forth between two quarterbacks. We did have JJ Ariano on earlier in the season on our show. I think he's a great young kid. He was all district and all metro last year. He did throw a couple touchdown passes against Cleveland in the last game of the season. Rio Rancho was competitive with Cleveland in the first quarter. Cleveland kind of ran away with that one. Sandia's got a pretty good quarterback themselves. Sophomore quarterback Jaleel Lewis had them against West Mesa a couple weeks ago. Jaleel Lewis threw for 4 touchdown passes. He's got some weapons at receiver. So I really like that matchup. Plus, Sandia is hungry. You know, they got knocked out of the playoffs last year after losing to Rio Rancho in a pretty lopsided loss. So a lot of interesting first-round matchups, man. Some of these, I think, are coin tosses. They could go either way. I think on the bottom side of the bracket, I got Centennial and Cleveland in the semifinal. Those two teams played first game of the season. Centennial comes up from Las Cruces into Rio Rancho, beats Cleveland on their home field. It's kind of hard to bet against Centennial, though, man. Aaron Ocampo does a fantastic job. They're undefeated. It's hard. I'm going to take Centennial on the bottom side of the bracket, and then I can't bet against Cam Dyer, the Gatorade Player of the Year, and La Cueva. I think we're going to, for the first time in 3 years, see a different matchup than La Cueva and Cleveland in the 6A state championship. And I'm going to take the La Cueva Bears to repeat as back-to-back state champions in Class 6A.
I think with the overall strength they have on both lines of scrimmage, Mason Poza, man, the way that guy roams as the linebacker and the hits he makes, I've got to go with La Cueva. as well. So that's a wrap on the football brackets. Do you have anything else to add, Coach? And before we break here, and then we'll be back in a couple minutes with our Pit Press Live. Do you have anything else to add?
Yeah, I would just check out the NMAA's website. Just Google NMAA. If you're interested in finding out where the games are, you can also go to the NMOT Facebook page. A lot of people will post the times and locations of games. But it's an exciting time, man. State soccer tournaments going on right now. I think we have the semifinals tomorrow in some classes, and then we'll have the finals this weekend. State volleyball is right around the corner. That'll be starting, I think, next week. All of those games are played at the Rio Rancho Event Center. So fall sports wrapping up. It's a real exciting time for sure.
Yeah, no doubt about it. That'll do it for this version of Road to the Pit. I'm Ed Nunez. For my son, Nick Nunez, stay tuned for the Pit Press Live in about 5 minutes.
Our head coach of our local football program, Bronco Mental.
The details themselves with the right preparation can separate you from mediocre competitors that don't do that. And so, yeah, the attention to detail, I think, drives the execution, or should I say brings the execution to life, especially in critical moments.
she didn't envy me. Passing it off like CP3. Shawty, she calling me MVP. I be on time, it's something you ain't never seen before. They call me the Dama, really want my whole team to score. Damn, yeah, too icy, yeah, too clean, yeah, my zone, yeah, 2-3, yeah, got shooters that hit from deep, bust like Giannis, yeah, too mean. Bright lights like we at the garden, on P, when you started, whole team walk through me to party. If I can't make the play, I'ma lob it. If you jump, that's right on your head. Had to put him to sleep, go to bed. I'm a star, drop 50 and left. From the logo, like I'm Steph. Put it up, knock him down every time. Going hard like my life on the line. Catch me on the course, I would've dime. Never losing, I put it on mine. Had to get off my shit, I've been laying low. Take it real when it comes to the playoffs. The fight with me, no one's a KO.
Let him cook now. Let him cook. I said let him cook. I think our host, Eric Moulton, is on mute.
Oh, sorry, guys.
Yeah, you're muted,
The
Eric.
Pit Post Live. I was just hyping up Sydney Benally and you guys' interview with her. I thought she's got one of the best players in the state, Gatorade Player of the Year, headed to Princeton. Not a lot of people can say they're doing that, especially from the state of New Mexico. But wanted to get your guys' last thoughts on that is before we introduce tonight's first guest, Mr. Ben Wysong, and we talk a little bit of UNM football. But any last thoughts on Sydney, Ed?
Go ahead,
Nick?
son. Go ahead.
No, I mean, I think she's just phenomenal, like you said, Eric. To be in the position that she's in, to go to an Ivy League school on the East Coast in New Jersey, 4.2 GPA, averaged over 20 points per game. Just love watching her play, too. You know, I did get to see her play last year against St. Pius. She's got a style that people want to see. She plays defense. She hounds you. She steals the ball. She can shoot the three. She can play in transition. She's a pass first point guard. So just really, really honored that we had the opportunity to speak with her, for sure.
You know, I second that, Eric. She's really a humble young lady, but works very hard. I watched them play last year. That game against Hobbs and the open season is going to be one hell of a game. It really is. But just to listen to her and then for her to get the opportunity to go to a school like Princeton, and with her GPA, I always say academics carry the day. I didn't have those kind of grades. I wished I'd worked a little bit harder. So whenever I hear that, I'm like, hey, that's great, because basketball or whatever sport will end unless, athletes go pro. Maybe she has a chance, maybe down the way. But she's already preparing for life. We're going to a school like that. So I thought she was great. I really did.
Yeah, really impressive young lady. I mean, putting academics first. I mean, you don't ever really get an opportunity to go to an Ivy school, much less Princeton, and play basketball for a top 25 program. I think Nick mentioned that. I didn't realize that until you said it, but really happy for her. I think the whole state of New Mexico will get behind a player like that, especially someone from the reservation and who has kind of seen it all. I think that it's really underappreciated how big res basketball is, enough so for LeBron and producing Co to come up with kind of documentaries on it. But I think there's a few more on Netflix that kind of highlight it, and it's a staple here in New Mexico. So, but without further ado, we want to kind of transition into some UNM football, and the one and only Ben Wysong. Hey man, thanks for jumping on. I know I think I let you know ahead of the show that we weren't going to have Ryan on tonight, but you still didn't hesitate coming on. So we always appreciate having you on, man. How's it going?
Yeah, it's going good. Thank you guys very much for having me on. Yeah, it's always fun talking football or just sports in general, man. So it's good to. Yeah, that was a great interview with Sydney. She's a baller. She's a lot of fun to watch, and and it's kind of cool too because I mean, you got the combo. You got Sydney, you got Bella, and I forgot the other girl's name, the taller one. She's been getting heavily recruited too. I think she's out from like Mount.
We had her on last year.
Oh,
you guys
Harper
had
Dunn.
her on.
Harper Dunn. There we go. And it's like, I mean, you got 3 girls high caliber like that, playing in the same era in a sense. I mean, that's, from a girls basketball standpoint, that's kind of unheard of out here. So it's really cool to see that develop and see these girls just, represent, not only their schools, but represent the state. So, and yeah, hats off to Sydney. I mean, Princeton, that's a big deal. And I think you nailed it right on the head. She's setting herself up for life, after basketball, especially going to a school like that. And I mean, what a great opportunity for her. So yeah, I mean, I'm happy for her as a basketball fan. So, good on her.
Yeah. UNM football.
Mm-hmm.
49-45, Wyoming over New Mexico. They end up taking that last lead late in the game. UNM had a 10-point lead in the fourth quarter.
Mm-hmm.
Luke, unfortunately, didn't get to play. Kind of
Right.
bummed about that, but I think they're kind of looking more long-term for him, get him back healthy and back to 100%. But initial knee-jerk reaction to the overall game, what was your impression?
I mean, overall, I mean, a little frustrated. Just hey, how often does it happen here with us with UNM lately, where they score 45 points and they still lose a game? And so there's a level of frustration in that regard. But I mean, looking at the other side of the coin, I mean, it's still refreshing to see that hey, these guys can put up a ton of points. This offense has been a lot of fun. I think kind of goes without saying the defense still has a lot of work to do and a lot of things to clean up, just playing simple, fundamental football. And, with this team just being able to complement each other on, both sides of the ball, but yeah, I mean, frustration, I would say probably not only just, obviously for me, but just, the football team in general. I mean, hey, these guys were expecting to win this game. I don't know how much that influenced maybe Luke playing or not playing in this sense, thinking that, looking towards the future, like towards, the last half of the schedule with San Diego State, big one with Washington State here at home in 2 weeks. And then, the finisher at Hawaii over Thanksgiving. So, but I mean, I'm excited for the opportunity that's coming up on Friday. Should be a good one. I think it's going to be another tough battle.
Yeah, no, I think you hit some solid points there. I think that it's so easy to point to the defense, right? But I mean, when you have Devin Dampier who totaled 4 touchdowns on the year, it's really hard to come across that stat line and you still are on the losing end.
Sure.
It really, one of those things that's really hard to swallow. But
yeah,
looking, Ed, Nick, do you guys have any thoughts on football? I'm not sure if you guys were able to help recap on Monday. I know Nick and Rick jumped on right before we went pregame with Lobo basketball, but did you guys have any thoughts on
you know what?
football?
I do. And, yeah, they said Luke warmed up. He was out there warming up. And one of my questions to Ned James was, I think you always miss a player like that. They made plays in the passing game. They still did.
Sure.
But I still think, not having him out there on, as a returner, punt returner too, because he breaks, I still think, they still scored 45. But not having his presence out there, I thought they missed him. I did. They did make plays. But I gotta ask this. You don't know with Coach Mendenhall who's hurt. He's not going to say anything, right? The turquoise. We talked about that last time. Read the paper. Who's in a turquoise jersey? You might get a clue. He's not going to really say who's hurt or who's not. But I gotta ask this though. He always says execution matters most in critical times. And in critical times, they haven't executed. They haven't. It's the bottom line. Now, I'm a Lobo fan, by the way. I love them. You know that. Since 1970, man. That's my team.
Yep.
When we're sitting up there in the press box, I can't say anything. There's times I'm like, oh, sure, I want to say something, but you can't.
Sure.
You can't say nothing, man. They make that clear. No cheering, no reaction. And I'm like, man. I'm just sitting there like, oh, man. And sometimes I think I want to sit down there with the fans, nothing against anybody in the press box, so I can react, be a fan. I am a
absolutely.
fan. But so what's your, are they it's a different team than last year, different scheme, different coach. How far away, again, are they from executing when the times are most critical? Coach Mendenhall stresses that all the time. How far away are they?
I think they're pretty close, and I think you nailed it on the head. You touched on it. I think in this game in particular, looking back at it, I think it was the turnovers. And not just the turnovers, because, they're going to happen in games, but I think it's the timing of them. These guys are playing solid football for 3 quarters, and it's, kind of reminded me of Montana State all over again, where it's like, hey, that 4th quarter just kind of came up and bit them. And, hey, when you throw in that pick and then you have the fumble, towards one of the last drives of the game, that's going to hurt your chances of, winning the game. But I think they're close, especially on offense. Defense, I think it's a little bit of a different story. I think with the defense, they need to really start with the fundamentals. They're over pursuing on certain plays, especially when they have the QB read. They're biting hard, on the dive. And, I think on one of the plays, Anderson just almost damn near walked into the end zone, on one play. So, yeah, I'm with you. It's, hey, there's times. That's why for me, I don't go to bars and watch games. I stay at home and watch, because it's like, there are times, I watch football a different way than probably most, and I'm sure you guys do too. And it's, yeah, it can be frustrating. So, I'll be the first to admit as a fan, yeah, I think you're right though, Ed. I think they're right there. I think, there's the potential is definitely there. I think we're still seeing, the first year, I guess, struggles, if you want to call it, with, adjusting to a new staff, new scheme, and in a sense, like we said, at the beginning of the year, we were playing with 60 new guys on this squad. So, the gelling with this team coming together, I think it's part of it.
Hey, Ben. So I actually took my family to the game on Saturday. My 6-month-old daughter and my 3-year-old son. So that was exciting. It was hard to do, but I thought the turnout was decent. But one of the just few things that I've kind of been looking at, and I'm not one to sit here and be really critical of anything, because I know they're in a rebuild. I know they have 60 brand new players, but from an opportunity side of things, I think if they get NIL involved, right? 505 Sports Venture Foundation, Bronco is able to get more kind of the program established under his footing, recruiting some guys. If they could somehow recruit maybe 2 or 3 really good defensive linemen, maybe 2 edges, maybe one that can kind of anchor the middle and help slow down some of those runs.
Sure.
I think that they might be okay on the back end, right? I think the DBs have been playing all right. They just haven't really been getting much pass rush, and then being able to stop the run is probably the 2 glaring weaknesses that I see. So really, I think in a year or 2, if they're able to assemble a team, they could be right there. If they're still putting up 45 points a game, I don't see just a little bit more improved defense might translate into wins for them.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I was talking about him last week. I miss having Alec Marenko. I think he was a big loss for this defense. I look back and see what his potential could have been with this group, because that's kind of where I see, and I'm with you. I think, with the linebacker play, I think it kind of took a hit with him leaving, and you got these younger guys playing like Jaden. He's in his first full year of playing, middle backer, in a Division I program. So, I think there's some growing pains in that respect, but I think you nailed it. Yeah. I think it's, if they can get a couple more guys that can come in, especially on the D line, or I would say the front 7, and, that could really help out, in terms of the depth for one. I know we just went through these last couple of weeks, the depth. What was it? The Utah State game? They only played the same 2 linebackers the entire game. That's wild to me, where, back with Coach Long, we were rotating our front 7 pretty much every 3 plays, unless you were a guy like Spiegel or somebody, but, so, that's hard to do. It's hard to win games that way when you're playing these guys pretty much damn near every snap, especially at the linebacker position where, depending on the defense you're running, you're the quarterback of the defense. So, it can be tough. So, but you're right. I'm actually excited to see what they do in the offseason. Not trying to jump too far ahead, but to see what kind of caliber players that these guys bring in. and that can fit into this system, because I think the potential's there. I think this team has a very good potential of being really solid and actually playing for probably a conference championship probably sooner than people think. I mean, I might be a little biased with it, but I think the potential's there.
Ben, I had a question for you about the turnovers, because they have been a problem the last 3 games. Against Utah State, 4 turnovers, Colorado State, 4 turnovers, Wyoming on Saturday, 2 turnovers. So that's 10 turnovers in 3 games, over 3 turnovers a game. A guy like Devin Dampier, it's just part of his DNA to scramble and try to make plays and try to make some of those risky throws. That's kind of who they are on the offensive side of the ball.
Yeah.
How do they limit those and still allow him to be the player that he is? I mean, I think some of it is the growth. He's a sophomore, and there's a growing process to it. But how do you think these last 3 games down the stretch, how they're able to limit that?
Well, I think just looking at these last 3 games, I mean, especially particularly these last 2, I mean, they've only had really, I guess, 1.5 running back in the stable. So I think by losing those 2 running backs with Nakari and was it Jabin, that's definitely hurts. That's going to change the whole dynamic, and in some ways, even the play calling, with the offense. It could adjust like, hey, we've only got Eli now, so we might have to depend on Devin a little bit more with his feet. And that's not knocking on Mavia Peters. I mean, he's solid as well, but you can even argue if how true of a running back he is, in that regard compared to Nakari. I mean, we saw what he did against New Mexico State, so. I mean, yeah, it's tough. You're kind of having, for these coaches, you're having to adjust with the personnel that you have at this point. So, which can make things challenging. And, from a fan perspective, it's, it can be frustrating. But then again, from the fan perspective, we don't know exactly what's going on with those guys, behind the scenes. But yeah, I mean, I love watching Devin on his feet. I mean, the guy is incredible. I mean, 200 yards, between him and Eli each. I mean, I've never seen that done before in my, in my life, having those guys 400 yards each or combined. But, at the same time, if you hold him back a little bit and just not let him play, I mean, you see what happens. Turnovers can happen at that point. He's not saying that you're making him do stuff that he's not comfortable doing, but, just letting him ball out, in a sense. So
the one turnover, the one glaring one that a lot of people are talking about is the pick 6.
Yeah.
In the 4th quarter, following when they just went up 10, right? And you were alluding to the 400 yards total of rushing offense that Dampier and Eli Sanders had. I mean, he threw that pick 6 on 1st and 10. You have the lead. You're killing them on the ground already. I mean, I've never been critical of the offensive coordinator. I don't think I don't know if anything got changed at the line there, but why wouldn't you continue to run the ball and take down some of the clock? I mean, clearly Wyoming didn't prove anything of stopping the run. I think that one play selection definitely didn't determine the outcome, but it definitely swung the momentum.
No, you're absolutely right. I mean, yeah, I mean, you could look at the timing of it. I mean, the thing that I could think of, I mean, I know that pass was intended to Ryan Davis, and I know he had actually been having a pretty solid game that day too. I mean, and even looking at it, I mean, those, kind of a quick pass. I watched that play a few times, and I mean, I got to give credit to that DB. The second that he recognized that it was going to be an out, he bit on it and, just ran. I mean, literally ran with it. So, but yeah, I mean, you could always question, hey, why don't we just run the ball? But I could also say too, hey, maybe in Coach Beck's mindset, he's like, hey, they'll probably think you're going to run the ball. Maybe I can hit him with a pass and it can open up with Ryan Davis. So, I mean, we can play theoreticals, but yeah, I mean, it does make you question, hey, you got 2 guys that just went over 200 yards. Why not kill some clock and drive it down? The offense has been, clicking, pretty much all day. So, maybe, yeah, you could have also checked it at the line. We don't know. So, and I haven't heard anything about it, but as we all know, playing the sport, sometimes it just happens. We can question it. Monday morning quarterback all day about it.
I think those things are bound to happen, though.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay. So how many outs does he throw? And it's a long throw. It's a long throw, 30-yard throw, right? It's a long throw, down and out. and you mentioned the Wyoming cornerback had seen it a million times, and he jumped it, made a good play. Those things happen.
Sure.
But I got to ask you this. Devin Dampier, you mentioned. I talked to former UNM tight ends coach David Howes on Sunday, and he told me that Devin Dampier is the smartest player he's ever seen.
Absolutely.
He said that. And I told David, I said, that you said that tells me a lot, because Coach Howes, how many years has he had in football, winning a couple state championships at Rio Rancho. Got a lot of respect for David. So, but he's a freelance guy. Let's be honest, okay? And this isn't a knock. He's got how many players did he miss in space on Saturday near the sideline? They had him wrapped, all of a sudden a juke, and he's gone. And you're thinking you got air. You're thinking you're going to catch him, and boom, there's nothing there.
Sure.
So a lot of those plays that are designed, he's extending the play with his feet. He's moving around. Those aren't designed plays, right? Their receivers got to come back for the ball. He's making plays, but sometimes they get holding calls, right? Because and those things happen. I'd still rather have him as an elusive quarterback than some statue quarterbacks that couldn't get out of the way. I mean, He's amazing. But I got to ask you this. What do you see room? I asked Ned James this, who coached in the pros, was a quarterback himself. Where do you see the improvements Dampier needs to make as far as his own game? Maybe throwing low passes sometimes behind receivers. Those things happen. I'm not criticizing. It's just a question. Where do you see the improvements that he might need to make from a throwing standpoint, mechanic standpoint? What are the improvements you see he has to make?
I think just from what I've seen, I would say just maybe slightly quicker decisions. Because I think that's going to eliminate the penalties for one. As we know, as a quarterback, if the longer you hold the ball, the longer you're going to be susceptible of getting a penalty, and most likely it's going to be a holding. But I would say his decision making though is good for the most part. I mean, that's something I think no matter what position you really play, he could improve on. The other glaring thing I would say too is that if he's going to run the ball, run the ball. Don't try to. Don't get me wrong. I love, how flashy he can be, and how he is on his feet. But sometimes if you're back there for a little too long, I mean, you can set yourself up for disaster and possibly, and even a turnover too at that point. So, but other than that, I think Devin is a fantastic quarterback. He's a lot of fun to watch. And, I look forward to watching him every day, getting back there and just see what he does. I mean, he kind of reminds me of Michael Vick. You don't know what he's going to do, and when he does it big. So he's a playmaker. He's the heart and soul of that team, in my opinion.
Ben, I had a question for you about the defense. Eric talked about it. This is just a team that has not been able to generate a huge pass rush. And Eric's comment was, well, we need a couple guys on the defensive line, some guys on the front seven. I mean, they've got 8 sacks all season.
Sure.
And, when you watch them, you listen to the commentators, and I think I watched Jay Norvell's press conference before the UNM game. He talked about it. He was like, UNM brings pressure. We got to be ready for it.
Yep.
You can tell, and I didn't play football, but you can tell they're blitzing on some plays. They bring guys. They're just not able to get there. I mean, is it a personnel thing? Is it a scheme thing? I mean, these last 3 games, how is it that they're able to get pressure on the quarterback?
I think a lot of it, can come down to just the fundamentals of the blitzing. Like for one, I know for us, it was something as simple like when you're blitzing, you don't ever go face up on a man. You pick a side and you go with it. As long as they're maintaining the gap integrity. I've noticed that every now and then with these guys. Some of these guys are going straight up on the lineman. It's like, hey, once lineman got 2 hands on you, it's have fun trying to shed the block unless you're some JJ Watt type who can just, shed and run like the way he does. I mean, that's tough, especially with that Colorado State line that you referred to. Those guys are tough. That's probably one of the best lines they're going to see all year. But yeah, I think it's just the fundamentals of it. Hey, make sure you're maintaining your gap integrity. And, a lot of the things I noticed too, the way we blitz compared to these guys now is that, when we were blitzing, we were kind of timing the snap a little bit. To where we weren't really blitzing from depth a whole lot, which, it can work in some ways, especially if you got linebackers who can just fly downhill, but hey, do we have that? Is this scheme really set up for that? Where, if you notice with Coach Long with us, we were creeping up, timing the snap count. And even if we were there at the line just a little bit before, we were on our toes ready to go. So it could just, little things like that, I preferred it just because, I went through it. I like the creeping up and, hey, if you are even showing it just a little bit, it's, hey, I'm still going to come at you full speed, and I'm going to pick a side, and I'm going to try to get around you. So, but I will say this with the defense. I mean, these guys have been playing really physical, though. I mean, they've been playing, these guys have been playing with a lot of heart. So I don't want to knock on these guys. They're playing tough. It's, hey, first year, I know these guys have a lot of pressure. I mean, I'm sure they're probably hearing outside noise, guys like us talking about them. So, I mean, there's that. But, hey.
Yeah, they're in these games.
Exactly. That's the
like
thing. I will give them that. Yeah, they're in a lot of these games. I mean, hey, Colorado State, I'll be the first to tell you, if we had Luke, Nakari, and Javen, we win that game. In my opinion.
Yeah.
I mean, that defense played lights out. So, we see that the potential's there. It's, it could just be a matter of a scheme thing. Every team is slightly different,
Yeah. I'm with you, man. And I'll just say this real quick. I think as far as where we thought this team would be, I mean, outside of that Montana State game, which I know Ryan Tamari talks about, that will come back to bite him. Maybe it does. But this team is ahead of where I think fans would expect them to be in year one, considering that we've got 60 new players on the roster, like Eric mentioned. So, it's easy for us to sit here and be critical and say, oh, they don't get pressure on the quarterback. But no, they're definitely competitive, and they've been exciting to watch this year.
Yeah,
for sure.
No, it's been a lot of fun. I mean, yeah, I get the frustrations too. I mean, I'm with you. There's times like even last week when I was watching the game, I'm just like, it's like, damn, man, are you kidding me? Like, what the like football gods just don't like us today or something. I don't know what it is, but yeah, the good thing I will say is that the potential's there, and it's refreshing to see, because I mean, I personally, I don't think I've seen it there for quite some time, probably since the 16 team that went to the bowl game the last time.
Yeah.
So it's, you got to take your wins any chance you get at this point.
Actually, Eric, I've got one more question for
Go
Ben.
ahead.
Go
Ben,
ahead. It's the elephant in the room, man. After every single game and after every play that Dampier makes, you even hear it up in the press box a little. How much is it going to take, man, to keep him? Are you confident? And it's a realistic thing. Okay, that's the way it is. We hope he stays here. He's the best quarterback we've had here since Donovan Porter. He probably does a little bit of things more than Donovan did. No knock on him. Devin Dampier is a very gifted quarterback, very gifted athlete. Are you confident that New Mexico will be able to retain him?
I'm pretty confident. I mean, just, hearing, from the guys, just how much these guys love this coaching staff, and just the team camaraderie that they have. I mean, Coach Benally, I know, we hear him every week, hey, the team spirit's good. These guys are in good spirits, ready to work another week. I mean, and I believe it. It's true, because, when I talk to Luke and Evan every week, I mean, I mean, they're disappointed that maybe, hey, they lost that week, but, they're ready to work still. So it's refreshing to see that. And I think that'll go a long way in terms of keeping some of these guys here, especially a guy like Devin. But as you said, I mean, hey, we live in a whole different world now. I mean, when you hear of some of these guys here, they're getting offered $750 or $1 million a year just to play. I mean, how is a 18 to 22-year-old going to kind of reject that, and, not even in football, is, in all sports now. I mean, you hear some of the stuff with the basketball guys, you're just like, holy cow, like, you're going to get paid $1.5 million just to play basketball, and you're not even technically a pro. So yeah, it's going to be interesting to see, but I'm pretty confident with it. But then again, I'll say I wouldn't also knock him either if, he gets a good opportunity and decides to go elsewhere. I mean, is it going to be hard to see him go? Absolutely, 100%. But, hey, that's where we got to go into the recruiting, and hopefully we can pick up another guy, or we develop the guys that we have now. So I guess we'll cross that bridge when we get there.
That's the reality. And, that's just the way it is, right?
It is.
And that's a guy there. And I've watched Lobo football since 1970, man. That, I remember when Rocky played quarterback listening to Mike Roberts run the wishbone.
Yeah.
So this guy here, Stoney Case, was drafted in the NFL, but Dampier is a dynamic player. And, I think a lot of Lobo fans definitely, of course, want him to stay.
Yeah, he's a lot of fun, man.
Yes, he is. He is.
Yeah.
Well, his name is Ben Wysong. Ben, it's always a pleasure having you join our group. I'm not on as often as I would like to be, but I surely tune in every time you guys talk. Extremely knowledgeable, ex-player, got some strong ties to the program. Before we let you go, New Mexico fans got an exciting Friday coming up. Obviously, basketball is against UCLA, and then football travels out to San Diego to play against San Diego State. To me,
fly out
a
tomorrow.
very winnable game.
Mm-hmm.
What's your prediction before we let you go?
I'm going to say right now, I think we go 2-0. I'm going to
Okay.
call it the bold move, and I think UNM pulls it together basketball. I think they moderately shock the world, and even with the football team, I think they do good too. I think they come out with a win as well. I think these guys are hungry for a win, and I think from the men's basketball standpoint, I think these guys are probably ready to get back on the court after what happened this last week with oh my gosh, who did they play?
Nicholls.
Yeah, Nicholls. There we go, Nicholls State.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna go on a limb and say 2-0.
Okay.
So
wow.
I like
and I think I will say too. I will say the offense gets 50 points.
Okay.
So,
I haven't watched San Diego State that closely this year, but you would know better than I would.
Yeah, yeah, I'm just throwing it out there at this point. I haven't been able to watch a whole lot of San Diego State. I watched them a little bit when I think they played Hawaii, but I try to tune in every now and then because you got Cody Moon on that team. He's actually a good. Their family, they're good friends of ours, so we try to support the guys. Even though they're wearing the other jersey, but I mean, hey, it's 505 love, So
yeah.
Yep.
All right, on. He is Ben Wysong. Man, thanks again for coming on. Maybe we'll bug you towards the end of the week if we're going to do a preview show. Ryan's actually headed out to Las Vegas. He's going to be at the UCLA New Mexico game. So I know he's trying to go live ahead of that game. So maybe we'll talk a little bit of football. And if you're available, he might be bugging you for that. But always appreciate your time, man. We'll check in with you soon.
Yeah, sounds good, guys. Thanks you for having me. And yeah, go Lobos.
Thanks, man.
Thanks guys.
Let him cook. Let him cook now. Let him cook. I said let him cook.
All right, welcome back to the Pit Press Live. That was Ben Wysong. We love having him on. We love talking Lobo football, and he's the next player and knows the X's and O's. But now moving on to New Mexico State Aggies, we got Nick Coppola with Las Cruces Sun News. Nick, thanks for joining us. I know that you're probably used to seeing Ryan's face up here making the introductions, but tonight you get me. But we always appreciate you coming on, man. And when I'm not on, I'm always tuning in religiously. So always appreciate your insight, your takes. And I do want to switch it up on you tonight. So hopefully I'm not throwing too much of a curveball at you, but I want to start with basketball, right? I mean, this is basketball tipped off this week. New Mexico State did host New Mexico Highlands. They did come away with a win. I was just looking at the score, 93-57. What was your take? How was the turnout?
Yeah, I think they look pretty good. You always have the caveat in there of Highlands is a Division II team and they're not really that good. But I thought there was a lot to like with New Mexico State. They got to play a lot of the new players and many of them look very impressive. Robert Carpenter and Christian Cook continued to be great. Those were their two leading scorers against Highlands. Robert Carpenter is off to a really hot start. He got over 20 points in the exhibition against Western New Mexico. He scored 18, which I believe led the Aggies against Highlands, and he looked really good. Christian Cook led the team in threes. He's looking like he'll be one of the best players in the conference. And like I said, we got to see a lot of their new guys play roles, like Deontay Bostic and Zoddy Jackson. Both of those guys started. Their freshman guard and 3-star recruit Gabe Pickens came off the bench, and I think he played about 16, 17 minutes and got 7 points, so he looked pretty impressive. Carl Churenfant is someone who they're really excited about. He's very talented, but he's still very raw, and that showed in his first game. I don't think he had a good shooting night, but he made some good defensive plays, so if they can get him to come around offensively and shoot the ball better, then he's going to be really good for New Mexico State's. The one observation that they would probably want to clean up is the turnovers. They had 4 more turnovers than Highlands, 26 in total, despite the fact that they obviously won by a lot. Just a lot of sloppy passing, just a lot of poor communication. It is a team with over 10 new players, so maybe they just still need to play a little bit more together and be a little bit more cohesive and things like that. But they probably could have won by an even larger margin if they did not turn the ball over so much. They would have gotten 100 points if they didn't turn the ball over that much. So they definitely got to clean that up because their schedule does get a lot tougher from here. But yeah, I think early signs point to the team being a little bit better than last year, at least. I don't know if they're going to make the tournament, just because Conference USA is probably a one bid league again, and there's probably a couple teams that put above New Mexico State at Conference USA at the moment. But they look promising.
Yeah, well, Coach Hooten's in his second year. Obviously, he was able to recruit some of his guys, bring in some new transfers. You did mention some of the guys that had the guy that had 18 points, Robert Carpenter, played 20 minutes. Looks like the minutes were kind of evenly distributed too, just looking at the box score. But one thing that really stood out to me was the shooting, especially the 3-point shooting. Looked like they hit 14 threes at about 45%, which looks promising. Looks like they got a couple guys that can shoot from the outside. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, for sure. Robert Carpenter, again, in the exhibition game against Western Mexico, he hit 6 threes, so it looked like he was going to be the main 3-point guy for them, and looked like that against New Mexico Highlands. He shot 4 for 7 from beyond the arc. Christian Cook actually led the team in threes, going 5 for 9 shooting, and they had a couple other guys, Zoddy Jackson, Deontay Bostic, both made multiple 3-point shots as well. And so, yeah, this is a team that really wants to shoot the 3 ball. They got a lot of guys that can shoot the 3 ball. Cook and Carpenter, especially, both those guys are going to be really good from beyond the arc, and that definitely seems to be something that they really want to do. They shot 32 of them against Highlands, so it's definitely something that they want to emphasize. That was something that they want to do. Not a bad idea. That's where basketball has been heading for a while now. And so, yeah, I was impressed with their 3-point shooting, and they're very deep in guys that can't shoot.
Yeah, I don't know this off the top of my head, but how many incoming transfers do they have at this year's squad?
Let's see. I don't know off the top of my head. So they got Zoddy and Deontay are 2 starting transfers. So that's 2. Carl Churenfant's another. Peter Philiptovidi. He's another guy. He's hurt right now, so he'll make his debut later on. Carl Churenfant is another guy. Yeah, so there's 5, 6, 7, the guys. They got a couple recruits coming as well. Gabe Pickens is probably the main recruit that came in for them. But yeah, a lot of their key contributors are probably going to be transfers, especially in the starting lineup.
Where did Pickens play last year?
He came out of Phoenix. I don't know what high school off the top of my head. I think it was Dream City Christian, or something like that. But yeah, he's a true freshman. So this is his first year at New Mexico State.
Yeah, cool. Nick, the other Nick Nunez. I'm not sure if you read anything that Nick Coppola has put out on New Mexico State basketball. Want to get your take there, or anything that you've kind of come across that kind of jumps out at you?
Yeah, thanks, Eric. Nick Coppola, the thing that jumps out to me is the strength of the pre-conference schedule for New Mexico State. I mean, I'm looking at it. They've got Dayton, they've got UNLV, they've got UNM, and they've got Texas. I mean, those are 4 teams that really kind of jump off the page. Top 75, top 100 Ken Pom teams. What do you think of the strength of schedule for New Mexico State going into the conference season?
Yeah, it's very difficult, and we'll really find out what this team is made of very soon. Specifically, since they got a lot of those games, like you mentioned, upcoming. Dayton is just their fourth game of the season. They play UNLV right after that, and then not long after that, they got to play UNM, and then right after that, they play Texas. So we'll find out what this team is made of and how competitive they can be very quickly. We may find out this Saturday when they play Utah Tech. That's not going to be an easy game for them by any stretch. And so, yeah, I mean, they did schedule tough, and you got to give them credit for that. They did want to be tested, especially since those four games that you just mentioned, Dayton, UNLV, New Mexico, and Texas, all of those are road games. That they only get Texas A&M, Corpus Christi, Pepperdine, Southern Utah, those teams at home. Definitely their easier non-conference games are at home, and all their tests are going to be on the road, and so that's gonna be really, really tough for them. And so, they could go into conference play with not maybe the record that they hope for, just because of the tough games that they'll have to play, and because pretty much all of them are on the road. But yeah, I like I said, I do admire that they schedule tough, and we'll see what happens. We'll see how this team looks in those games.
Who do you like in Conference USA, Nick? UTEP, we got to see them in the exhibition a couple weeks ago. They look pretty good. They like to pressure the ball. They like to play up tempo. They were in the Conference USA Conference Tournament Championship last year. Who do you like in your kind of top teams in Conference USA?
My favorite for the Conference USA will probably be Louisiana Tech. I think they have the best player in the conference in Daniel Bacho. I got to see him when he was at Texas Tech, and he's a really good player for them, and will probably be the best player in the conference this season. So I like them to win the conference and go to the NCAA tournaments. You can't forget about Western Kentucky. Of course, they were the team that did go to the tournament last year out of Conference USA. They'll be a favorite again. Sam Houston is as well. Obviously, and Jason Hoon left a good program behind. And Sam Houston is still going to be very good. UTEP, like you said, is going to be good. I'm watching out for Middle Tennessee and Liberty as well. It's going to be a very deep conference, just in terms of how many contenders there are. There's no clear runaway favorites, and maybe the favorites New Mexico State, because maybe they can be a little bit competitive, and maybe have a little bit of a chance to win. I don't think they're going to win Conference USA. But there's certainly a lot of teams that can win the conference, and there's going to be a lot of tough games for New Mexico State, just because of the amount of teams that can win the conference. And so, yeah, Louisiana Tech and Western Kentucky are definitely at the top. But yeah, don't forget about Sam Houston, UTEP, and Liberty as well.
Gosh, I was just looking at that schedule too. Thanks for pointing that out, Nick. That Texas A&M Corpus Christi game is a little interesting to me too. They actually challenged Purdue this last week a little bit. I think they tied them in the second half. They struggled in the first half to kind of get their offensive rhythm going. But your general take with New Mexico State and the Highlands game, I know obviously Highlands is kind of a step below as far as competitions go, but we actually had Mike Dominguez, the head coach of Highlands, on our show last year as a preview to that. But how are these guys kind of gelling together? A lot of new faces kind of buying into Hooten's program. What's the confidence level around the program and what these guys might roll out this year?
The team definitely looks a little bit more cohesive, especially compared to their scrimmage. Their scrimmage, they definitely looked like a team that had a lot of new players on it. This time, they were a little bit more of that. They had a lot of turnovers, so there's still work to do in order to play more like a team. But yeah, I mean, there was a lot of things to like out of that game. I don't think you can make a judgment off New Mexico State. It's off this game, just considering the quality of the opponents. It's a game they were supposed to win. It's a game that they were supposed to win pretty easily. But yeah, I think there was some things like that. The fan base was definitely impressed. I was on Twitter for a little bit after the game, just tweeting some stuff out for the press conference and tweeting some videos and things like that. So the fan base definitely seemed to be impressed. They definitely do think that they could be better than last year. They definitely think that they have more depth than last year. All things that could probably come true. They definitely want to get more fans in the Pan Am, though. They had only about 3,700 in there. They definitely want to get that up. But yeah, I do think as a whole, the team and definitely the fan base is confident that they can be more competitive than they were last year.
No, I think that's good to hear, and I think UNM's kind of in the same boat with like basketball season couldn't come soon enough, where it's
Right.
just a nice transition, right,
Exactly.
with how everything is happening in football. But kind of going to football, New Mexico State did lose to FIU, which is in the Bowl
Pitbull
with
Stadium. Yeah.
Pitbull Stadium. Um, Focusing on there, they lost 34-13. I didn't watch that game myself, but I mean, were they competitive in that game? Did they show any signs of life? What was your take there?
It was competitive for the majority of it. The game kind of got away from them late in the last 7-8 minutes or so, and that's why they lost by 21 points. But it was competitive. The first half was very defensive. There wasn't that much scoring going on. New Mexico State did start their fourth quarterback of the season, Brandon Nunez. Well, actually, he's the third quarterback to start, the fourth quarterback to play. But he got his first start. He led the team very efficiently against Louisiana Tech in their double overtime victory. He did the exact opposite in this game. He really struggled. He finished with just 12 passing yards, which is the lowest for a New Mexico State starter since 2009. And that quarterback was playing Ohio State. And Brandon Nunez was of course playing FIU. And he made some good plays with his legs. He got a couple good runs. One was negated by a holding penalty that didn't go in the stat sheet. But he just couldn't throw the ball. Their longest completion was just 7 yards. And they tried a couple deep shots. They just couldn't hit the mark, whether it was just overthrowing guys or just some miscommunication. They just could not throw the ball. They were very one-dimensional. 216 of their 246 total yards in that game were rushing. Their only touchdown was rushing. And defensively, they just kept getting beat deep, whether they're throwing out quarters coverage or just any other type of coverage. They could not contain the deep pass, specifically to Eric Rivers, the FIU receiver, who obliterated the school record for receiving yards in a game. I think he ended up with about 290, I think, something around there. And that mark was also, I think, the third or fourth highest in Conference USA history for a single game. And so he beat New Mexico State's defense almost single-handedly. And so those were their two main issues. They couldn't throw the ball. They're very one-dimensional on offense, and they really couldn't stop anything going deep defensively, and that just kind of led to a loss because they just kept getting beat deep late, and that allowed FIU to build a lead. And they just couldn't do anything on offense other than run the ball. And especially when you have a big deficit, when you have to start throwing the ball, it just gets a little bit tougher for them. So, yeah, it was a winnable game for them despite the final scoreline, but definitely a lot of things to work on for them.
Gosh, yeah, I was just looking at that stat line. Eric Rivers, 295 yards, 3 touchdowns, basically averaging 30 yards a catch.
Right. Yeah. All three of his touchdowns were over 50 yards as well. So it wasn't just like he was just getting 2-yard tosses thrown at him. They were going deep to him a lot.
Yeah. The quarterback play, it kind of seems to be their ongoing Achilles heel, right? Not really being able to establish a pass game. Teams load the box. You can be somewhat effective on the ground if you get creative, but that's kind of been the one glaring hole in their offense. And then on the defensive side, not really being able to stop anybody. Do you think they're going to be in the portal or on the recruiting trail hard for a new quarterback, or do you think they're going to try to develop one from within that maybe someone they already have?
I think they're going to have to try to portal. They've started 4 guys, or they played 4 guys, and none of them have really worked out for them. And we're about to go to their 9th game of the season against Bristol, Kentucky, and they're still trying to find their guy. Santino Mariucci and Brandon Nunez are kind of an either-or situation right now, where one could start, but the other could play, or one could play the whole game. They don't even know what's going on right now. And so, yeah, I do think if they want to figure out quarterback for 2025, one of these quarterbacks is either going to have to figure it out very quickly, or they're going to have to go portaling again. And they did that this past offseason when they lost Diego Pavia. They got Santino Mariucci and Deuce Hogan from the portal from Power 4 schools. Parker Watt and Brandon Nunez were JUCO guys that transferred over. So they did try to get some guys in through transfers. It's just that they've struck out on pretty much every single one so far. And, maybe they can try Jake McNamara, who's another transfer, but I don't think he's going to work out either. So I think if they want solve these quarterback issues and maybe have a guy from week 1, 2025 onward, they're going to try to have to go portaling because, I mean, looking at their recruiting class, I don't think they have a quarterback or at least not a quarterback that might be good enough for sure. So yeah, they're definitely going to have to explore some alternatives because I don't think any of these guys are going to do it for next year.
This was their last Tuesday night game of the season, right? They don't have any more left, so the rest are all on Saturdays.
Right, yeah.
Kind of unique to see him playing like on ESPN or ESPN
yeah.
or I'm not sure what it is, but it's nice to tune in midweek, but yeah, it's not going to happen anymore this season. So Nick Nunez, do you have anything for Nick Coppola before we move on to UNM basketball?
Last question for you, Nick. Looking at the rest of the schedule for New Mexico State football, they got Western Kentucky, who's arguably one of the best teams in the conference, top of the conference. Then they got Texas A&M, Middle Tennessee State, and UTEP. Seems like there's 2 winnable games on the rest of that schedule. What do you think? 4 games left for the Aggies. What do you think they got going forward?
Yeah, I agree. I do think that Middle Tennessee and UTEP are the only winnable games for them going forward. They do play a lot better at home than they do on the road, and they get Western Kentucky at home this Saturday. So maybe they'll be competitive then. Maybe they'll keep it close, but I just don't see them beating Western Kentucky. Texas A&M is probably going to beat them by 50, 60 points. I mean, that game's going to be over by halftime. I joked with Ryan last week that Texas A&M is probably going to have to be sent to the Hague for the things that they do to New Mexico State's in College Station. So, yeah, I really just do not see them even having the slightest chance against Texas A&M in that one. Maybe they beat Middle Tennessee and maybe they beat UTEP. Like I said, those are probably the only 2 winnable games going forward. But the ceiling right now for them is 4-8. I don't think they're going to win a bowl game. I think they blew that when they lost to FIU. But yeah, I don't even think they finished 4-8. I think they probably drop at least 3 or 4 to end the season.
And then last question for you: what's up with your Oklahoma Sooners, man? I'm not sure if the season went as Brett Venables and Sooner fans thought it was going to go, but what happened?
The offense fell off a cliff. I mean, and I think I kind of knew there was going to be a little bit of struggles there because there were a lot of new, all 5 new guys, all 5 new stars on the offensive line. None of them had much experience. You have a new quarterback. You have a new offensive coordinator who is already fired. Jackson Arnold hasn't been working quite as well as you hoped. But also they've been really banged up. They've been missing most of their starting receivers. They've been missing 5-6 receivers for most of the season. They've had to start guys that were wide receiver 7, wide receiver 8 coming into the season. That just really hasn't worked out for them. I think they figured out the defense. I think the defense is, the best Oklahoma defense I've seen for them in a few years. But this is a historically bad offense for Oklahoma. I mean, probably not since the 1990s as though you had an offense this bad, and that's been the problem.
Fair enough.
Yeah, his name is Nick Coppola. He's with the Las Cruces Sun-News, covers New Mexico State football and basketball. Nick, it's always a pleasure having you on. I don't get to jump on that often and chat with you, but I do like what you have to say. I like what you read. I read what you write. I do follow from that perspective. So again, man, thanks for coming on the show, and I'm sure we'll be bugging you again next week to cover New Mexico State. So
all right,
appreciate it.
Thank you for having me on. Appreciate it.
Take care, man.
Yep. We're going to go to a quick break, and then Nick and I will kind of dive into some UNM hoops and kind of break down the Nicholls State game. And I think we might try to preview UCLA on Thursday or maybe Friday morning, afternoonish. Ryan will be live from Las Vegas. So we'll be right back after this quick commercial break.
Let him cook. Let him cook now. Let him cook. I said let him cook.
Welcome back after that quick commercial break. We're going to dive into UNM basketball and New Mexico's 91-84 win over Nicholls State this last Monday in a game that I thought there were going to be a little bit more at the pit. I'm not sure the announced crowd was about 10,000, a little more than 10,000 fans for an opener. But Nick, kicking it over to you. What's your initial impression or observation of this year's team? What jumps out to you?
Yeah, small sample size, Eric. I mean, first game, Nelly Jr. Joseph, fantastic double-double, 28 points, 16 rebounds. One thing I saw early on, and I think you mentioned it, Nicholls was playing, they switched defenses. They played a little bit of man, then they went to that matchup zone where the two guards kind of toggle back and forth. They really take away the middle. When Nicholls did go man-to-man, it did seem like UNM's half-court offense started out with some high-post entries to Nelly Jr. Joseph. And it seems like they're trying to open up the floor a little bit. I'm curious to see how long we see that kind of look. Their bread and butter last year was that pick and roll with Donovan Dent, Jalen House. I don't know if they're trying to go away from that more and kind of spread the floor out and get more guys involved, because defenses really did start to key in on that. But that at least jumped out to me at the beginning. Then Nicholls goes to that matchup zone. And I mean, we can talk about this all day, but we shoot 7 for 36 from 3. We were 4 for 22 from 3 at halftime. I admire the confidence. I think you asked some really good questions in the post-game presser with Coach Patino. Coach Patino defended his guys. He was like, look, if we score 91 points, that should be enough to win the game. I get that. I never thought I'd see this team shoot 36 threes, because I don't think they shot that many at all last year. At the end of the day, man, a win is a win. We'll take it, and a huge challenge on Friday for sure.
Yeah, at the beginning of the press conference, that's kind of how Patino addressed, before he even received any questions. It was like, we could talk about 3-point shooting until we get blue in the face. And he wasn't really necessarily like trying to deflect it, but it was just one of those things that stood out, right? I think it stood out from a feel of the game and fans watching in the stands and just kind of eagerly sitting there waiting for something to cheer for. You could just kind of hear some of the sighs after another three just kind of dropped. But I don't know if this is the type of team that's going to be successful when you shoot that many threes, especially when you've got an inside force like Nelly and how he was able to kind of handle the volume passes inside. The monster game, 28 points, 16 rebounds, 10 of 12 from the free throw line. I thought that was really impressive part of his game. But Nelly's he's basically in midseason form at this point. He looks the part. He runs the floor well. And then the article I wrote earlier this week, I really touched on his defense capabilities and him being able to kind of guard the perimeter, extend the defense a bit. He forced a lot of those Nicholls guards into those high traps around the half-court corners, forced some turnovers, moves laterally really well, especially for a big man, someone his size. So I did ask Patino about that, and he did allude to the fact that it kind of shocks some people when you have this 7-foot guy who's extremely athletic, really wide shoulders, strong. I think he's got like a 7-foot wingspan just kind of coming up on you. It kind of startles you a little bit. So him having that type of impact on the defensive side is going to, I think, pose some problems down the road for some teams that think they can kind of have their way around the half court and start running their offenses there. But other than Nelly, who do you think kind of stood out from the offensive perspective on being able to score? Because I know that was one of the questions that Rick, Ed, you and Ryan and even Jacob had touched on with Jalen House and Jamal Mashburn Jr. leaving. They basically took 40% of last year's offensive scoring with them. And so we were kind of wondering, well, who's going to be the go-to guys this year to kind of fill it up? So what was your kind of offensive impression of this team?
Yeah, I think this offense is at its best when Donovan Dent is being creative. I don't think he did that too much early in the first half. I did notice kind of later in the second half towards halftime, they're at their best when he penetrates and he finds an easy dump off at the basket for Nelly or Mustafa or whoever it is, or if he's kicking it out for an open three. He was second on the team in scoring with 15 points. Mustafa had 13. So yeah, I think offensively that is this team's identity, playing through Donovan Dent, whether it's pick and roll, in transition, or in the half court, him just being creative, finding some space and finding teammates. That's when this team is at their best. One guy that kind of stands out to me, I don't think he shot the ball particularly well, but is Philip Borovichinen, and I'm going to continue practicing saying his last name because it's tough. But, he's got size, man. What is he, 6'9", 6'10"? He rebounds the ball really well. I'd have to look up the box score to see exactly how many rebounds he had. I think he's just finding his comfort level. I think Rick talked about this on Monday when they kind of broke it or were previewing the game. He didn't play a ton at Arizona. And so he's finding his legs, finding his feel for the game. He's in the starting lineup, so he's going to get minutes, at least at the early part of the season. I'd like to see him kind of grow into more of a scoring role, and I'm not sure what that looks like because I'm not sure if he's the guy that's going to take you off the field. But I like CJ Nolan's ceiling. They brought him off the bench. He had a ton of open looks. He shot 1 for 9, and as Coach Pitino said in the press game conference, hopefully he doesn't have too many more 1 for 9 nights in his future. But he's a veteran guard that started at Oklahoma, played 2 seasons at North Texas, scored in double figures last year. You can just tell he's athletic, good shooter, can get to the rim. So I saw a lot of potential early on. And then the last guy I'll touch on is True Washington. We talked about him, I think, in your article when you previewed the UNM Nicholls game, or maybe it was Ryan's article, talked about how he could be a candidate for Defensive Player of the Year in the Mountain West Conference. He's one of those two-way players that can use his defense to generate offense. We saw him get in transition for a nice dunk. And in the exhibition, he shot the ball pretty well early in the first half. He knocked down 3 threes. So I think those are their main guys on the offensive side of the floor. Nelly, Junior Joseph, Donovan Dent, True Washington, and then Mustafa Anzil. Those guys got to shoot better. But all in all, 91 points is 91 points, man.
Yeah, no, it is. And True had 20 minutes. I thought he was going to see the floor a little bit more. I know that he was kind of in the rotation a little bit more to the bench on the floor, but this is back-to-back games where he starts each game with knocking a 3 down from the corner, kind of from a set play, right? Like it's a Donovan Dent penetrate, kick the ball out, and True hitting that. So I think that could be kind of a regular staple part of his game. You could tell he's just comfortable shooting it from there. But Philly B had 7 rebounds, 5 points, a couple of assists. I do think that there's a role to be had for him on this team because of his size, because of his ability to pass the ball, and because of the type of offense that they're running, right? We talked about Donovan Dent being able to be really effective in those high pick and roll screens and running off that game, either being able to penetrate off that or kind of dish it out for some of those pick and pops. But Philip could be one of those guys that kind of massages the outside of the 3-point line, sets some screens for him. And he's a really good passer. So if the ball is kicked to him at some point, he can get into the lane and then find another big down low. So I think that this offense is still kind of coming into its own a little bit. Some guys looked out of rhythm and out of place at times. There was a specific play that kind of stuck with me because I'm sitting right there on the floor taking photos of the game, and Donovan Dent and True Washington ended up in the corner together on offense. Like one was not supposed to be there, and you have to spread it out, right? So like when they get crowded, they're just kind of in the wrong place at the wrong time. And so I think these guys are still trying to find out how to play with each other. I don't think we'll see another game where CJ Nolan goes 1 for 9 from the 3-point line. That guy shot 38%. I think he's a career 38% 3-point shooter, 36 or 37, which is pretty consistent. But yeah, he's at his best as a slasher. He can get to the rim. He had some really nice finishes around the rim, was strong with it, can handle the ball. So again, it's really just these guys being able to kind of take what they're good at and kind of piecing it within the offensive rhythm of the game and not necessarily pressing or forcing or trying not to do too much. And I think we saw a little of that in this Nicholls game.
Yeah. I wanted to ask you about that, man, your thoughts. I mean, you mentioned the ball pressure from Nelly. I thought they made a little bit of an adjustment in the second half where they pressed more. They put Nelly on the top of the press, and they kind of looked a little bit like that team last year. And the personnel is different last year, right? You had Jalen House last year. You had Jamal Mashburn Jr. You had a stable of guards who you kind of relied on. Heavy ball pressure, turn the pressure up on the defensive side of the ball, force turnovers, press. And I thought they kind of became that in the second half. I mean, if you look at the box score, they had 23 points off of turnovers. They had 27 fast break points. And I love that style of play, right? Everybody loves to watch teams play in transition, play up and down. It's fun to watch. It's fast. But they didn't get to play that kind of game against Clemson in the first round of the NCAA tournament. There were teams last year that kind of caught on to that. The one game that comes to mind is the game in the pit, I think against Boise State, when they had Degenhart bring the ball up the floor and just kind of negated our ball pressure. So what do you think, Eric? I mean, they diverted back to that in the second half. Is that going to be the identity of this team coming into this year? Coach Pitino said it in the press game conference, we want to turn the ball pressure up more. I just don't know if they have the personnel this year to do that.
Yeah, it's tough, especially against. It's really hard to tell in the first game. Nicholls is a little undersized, so I think you can use Nelly with a little bit more flexibility in that type of situation. But I think it's one of those things that you kind of keep in your back pocket with Nelly, because with that more assertive on-ball pressure that you want to apply, also increases the chances of you drawing fouls.
Yeah.
Right. And so you got to keep guys out of foul trouble. So I don't know if you can sustain that type of pressure the full game, but I think Pitino kind of switched to that defense there in the second half because they did want to assert themselves a little bit more. They did want to kind of control the pace. And, this team and this style of offense that Pitino likes to play, they like to get out and run. And when you're putting ball pressure on like that on the defensive side, it forces them to speed up, and it really kind of just influences the game from the pace perspective to really speed up as well. So I think they have other capable guys that can kind of provide that type of on-ball pressure. I think True being the guy that's probably the most talented and physically capable of doing that. Donovan Dent is another guy that can. I think we watched Donovan Dent guard Blackshear last year from Nevada in that big game at the pit, and was kind of tasked with he was their best player. So I think he's also capable, but I was actually really impressed with Cade Dotson, the true freshman point guard from Beaumont, Texas. He came in, man, and he was just not scared to kind of stick his nose in there. He was actually kind of rubbing some elbows, throwing some shoulders into some guys. He was just not going to back down from any type of physicality. And he was really just kind of trying to assert himself there too. So I think they got a few guys on here with a nose or the attitude to go after and really be that type of in your face, really aggressive, fast paced defense. So to answer your question, yeah, I do think it's something that they could probably take advantage of, because they do have the guards on the floor that are able to do that. But staying out of foul trouble is probably the thing that you probably want to watch the closest with that. But
for sure. What did you think of the freshman Jovan? And I'm going to pronounce his name wrong. I need to get it right. I'm just going to call him Milovic. I know I'll get that right. Milicevic. Okay, 8 minutes. I don't know if he was one of the first guys off the bench in the first half. Maybe he wasn't, but I mean, there's a lot of hype surrounding him coming into the season. Big body, 6'10", can shoot the ball. I feel like, if he gets some more practice, some more reps under him, he could be somewhat of an X factor for this team down the road.
Yeah, he's another guy that I think is still trying to kind of get his bearings or get his footing within the offense and kind of find his role. But I mean, yeah, you talked about it. He's 6'10", big body, moves like a guard. He could play the 3 spot if need be, and he can shoot it. So he's a guy that's comfortable with the ball in his hands. He can create. He's a really good passer from what I can tell, but there's going to be an adjustment period for these true freshmen coming in, the pace of play, the physicality, the size of the guys that you're going to be playing. And I think he felt that a little bit, right? I think Nicholls, their personnel, they weren't extremely big, but they had some guys that were really dynamic, that were kind of in the 6'5" to 6'7", 6'8" size that can move really well, right? So
Yeah.
I don't think he's been able to play at that level coming out when he was with, I think it was Arizona Unity was the EYBL circuit team that he played with. So he's been playing a higher level of basketball in high school, but there's always going to be an adjustment period. But he's one guy that I mentioned in the article with could be a potential X factor on this team if he starts to get some confidence and really plays like he knows how. So really,
Yeah.
really high on him.
For sure, man. And then was curious your thoughts on UNM's 3-point defense. I mean, I think Patino talked about it in the press game conference. I mean, 15 to 37. I don't know. Looking at it from a fan's perspective, and I wasn't at the game, I'm like, man, how are these guys even catching the ball and getting an open look? Some of those threes were long, NBA range threes, and some of them were semi-contested. But what did you think?
They were long. They were contested. Obviously, as a fan, you sit there and you're frustrated, and you're just like, how are they letting these guys knock them down? But those guys were making some challenging shots, man. I'd give them credit. Brown, who is he's a preseason all preseason first team player, 25 points. He had 6 threes. I don't really think he had a whole lot of open looks. He's just really good with the ball in his hands.
Yeah.
And he's a really good shooter. I think he's like made 83s last year, shooting at 40%. So that's the whole length of a full season, consistent high level scorer. This team's experienced, man. I think a lot of people forget that, or maybe not forget, but just don't know that Nicholls had, I think, 10 or 11 returning players.
Yeah.
And out of those players that return, they had 8 guys that returned that were basically their rotation. So they have the exact same team that they had last year come back. So they really didn't skip a beat. And this team was 1 game away from making the big dance last year. They lost in their conference championship game. I don't think that game was too close, but obviously you can play if you're making your tournament championship and you're 1 game away from March Madness. So I thought it was a good test for UNM, and it definitely challenged them, but I don't think they're satisfied with the way the defense turned out and them being able to just limit the amount of threes that they're taking. But then again, I mean, some of them were kind of just Hail Mary shots too. So, but before we kind of move on, there's a bunch of questions that I probably want to get to. It looks like Ricky is chiming in from YouTube, and Philly B looked good in transaction offense, poor on defense. I know we kind of talked about it off to the side, but yeah, he just looked a little flat-footed and not as versatile as maybe we had hoped. But I think there's still kind of a plan of improvement there. Next question, your dad, Nick.
Yeah, man, I just can't ever get on this show without somebody making a comment about my hair, but it is what it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but about your defensive question, Nick, Rick also chimed in. They lost their man too many times and kind of the flow. Again, man, these guys are kind of still learning to play together. So it's really hard to gauge off of 1 game. They've been playing against each other all summer, and they got some tune-up games against UTEP and then that private scrimmage. So I don't know. I guess we'll find out a lot more on Friday when they play Blue Blood UCLA.
Yeah, man, I know Rick and Ryan are going to preview UCLA. I mean, I just saw UCLA's win on Monday. They shot 10 of 29 from the 3-point line. That's 1 game. Who knows what it's going to look like on Friday. But, yeah, I think, defending the 3-point line is going to have to be somewhat of a point of emphasis. But I think you're right, Eric. I mean, Nicholls is a veteran team. When you got a team that's going to shoot that many threes, no matter what, whether they're going in or not, I mean, it's kind of their night too. They shot 15 to 37. They shot a high percentage. So you got to tip your hat to them for sure.
Yeah. And I won't get into it too much because I know Rick probably wants to preview UCLA just because he prepped a bunch of notes on it, but they've got some dudes, man, some big guys too, 6'8", 6'9" guards. A few transfers in, one from Oregon State, one from Oklahoma State. Sky Clark came in from Louisville. So they've got some guys. Kobe Johnson, transfer from USC. Some guys with some high-level experience, big conference play, and guys that can score. So UCLA in their first game won 85-50 against Rider. Looks like Tyler Bilodeau, who was the transfer from Oregon State, had 18 points He was their
Yeah.
leading scorer. Dylan Andrews, 14 points. Andrews is he was with them last year, but they have a few guys on their team that can fill it up. They're consistent. They're sizable. So I
Yeah.
don't know what the rotation might look like, but I think we'll save the breakdown in the pregame either tomorrow or Friday for Rick and to Ryan to join, so we can dive into that a little bit more. But any last thoughts on Nicholls and what to take away from it? The 7 for 36, I think you can kind of throw out the window. I don't think it's necessarily a trend just yet. Frustrating, but I think things will change and they'll learn from something there.
Yeah, man. No, I'm just happy with the win, right? You take it any way you can get it. 91 points in the pit. It was good to see some of these new faces. I didn't get to see the exhibition game against UTEP. So I was happy to see True in a bigger role. Nelly balled out. We mentioned it last year. He wasn't even in the United States up until right before the season. So having a full off season of work, it was a game where he could dominate. And just looking forward to the test on Friday, winding the clocks back to last year. Our road test early in the season was against St. Mary's on the road. We did not look good. If UNM doesn't come out with a win on Friday, but if they're competitive, I think UNM fans should still be optimistic. It's a very competitive pre-conference schedule, and there's a lot to be excited about.
Yeah, I can agree with you. I know the guys on the field of 68 too had that game highlighted on Friday, and they actually were kind of siding with UNM there, thinking it might be a winnable game. So maybe they know something more than we do. I know UCLA and the brand and the logo on the front of the jersey could be a bit intimidating at times, but I think it's a good game for UNM. It's a good test early in the season. I'm not sure if I'm as sold on UCLA being as good as history of USC or UCLA has been told, but
Sure.
I'll be tuning in. I know Lobo football plays at the same time against San Diego State, so if you got two TVs, you better get them both up and showing them both at the same time. But Nick, any last thoughts before we jump off?
No, man, great show tonight. Great guests. Started with Sydney Benally, the Gatorade Player of the Year for girls basketball. Ben Wysong brought us some good insight on Lobo football, and it's always good to break down New Mexico State sports with Nick Coppola from the Las Cruces Sun News. So I thought we had a good show tonight.
I do too, man. Thanks for everyone for tuning in. We'll be putting some announcements out on when we're going to do a pregame. I know Ryan's in Las Vegas this week, so on Friday, probably mid-morning, early afternoon, we're probably looking at a live pregame show. Not sure where we're going to be posted up yet, but be on the lookout for that, and we'll talk to you then. Everyone have a good night.